I can't see their movements at all. That kind of speed and power that is completely unreasonable. The constant explosions came, but Iori Utahime's naked eyes were completely unable to keep up with this battle. Not only her, but even Mei Mei couldn't catch Lu Chen's fight with Fu Hieshi at all, only the appearance of big pits. This also means that the level of this battle has formed a huge gap with them. It's far from being able to participate in the first level and below magicians, and they don't even have the qualifications to watch from a distance. Miss 99, Master Lu Chen, Kuroi Misato, who was also unable to know how the battle was going, couldn't help but look at Kujuku Yuki. Temporarily speaking, Jun Lu still has the upper hand. Hearing what Kujuku Yuki said, Misato Kuroi and the others breathed a sigh of relief quietly. After the previous explanation by 99 Yuki, everyone present had a certain understanding of Fushier's Superman level. Characters of this level are far from being comparable to the curse user group that attacked them before. No, even in the huge Jujutsu world, there is only Fushier. This kind of existence actually took over the task of assassinating the eldest lady. Kuroi Misato felt scared after thinking about it. If it weren't for the existence of Mrs. Lu Chen, apart from Juju Yuji, none of them could have survived even a second in front of that terrifying black-haired man. In fact, 99 Yuki was barely able to capture the afterimages of Lu Chen and Fushier's actions. From this, the current battle situation can be judged. These two guys are really scary. That Fushier, who was like a human-shaped tyrannosaur, was destroyed wherever he passed. But Lu Chen was still calm and composed, without the slightest bit of messiness or inferiority in his actions. It is enough to see that Lu Chen's strength in the previous simple confrontation with Fushier is only the tip of the iceberg. Suddenly, 99 Yuki paused, and his eyes suddenly focused on the battlefield. Boom! An explosion that resounded through the entire forest rose up. However, Lu Chen, who released the fire escape in the distance, suddenly appeared behind Fushier, who was unscathed. Hey, where are you looking? With a wanton smile of winning, Fu Hieshi punched Lu Chen flying. Like an unloaded shell, it smashed into the billowing smoke caused by the fireball. Crack, crack. The huge wind pressure instantly blew away all the dust, revealing Lu Chen, who was dusting off his body in a deep pit of more than 10 meters formed by the explosion. That calm posture without any embarrassment is so easy. You guys are an out-and-out monster. Fu Hieshi's expression froze for a moment, and then he grinned, his fighting spirit unscrupulously vented from his body as sharp as copper tendons and iron bones. He had no reservations about that punch just now. Even if a special class receives this blow head-on, it will inevitably lose its fighting power, and the probability of being killed directly is even higher. But, with scarlet eyes in front of his eyes, Lu Chen, who brushed off the dust lightly, seemed to be a normal person. Don't be surprised, this is just a little use of chakra. Your changes just now are indeed very interesting. On Lu Chen's handsome and extraordinary face, the interest became more and more intense. So, can you continue dancing? Huh? Fu Hieshi didn't understand Lu Chen's meaning. But under the perception that even if he closes his eyes, the surrounding environment will continuously feed back all the changes around him, Fu Hieshi jumped onto another tree. The original big tree suddenly exploded, just when Fu Hieshi was about to look for Lu Chen. Lu Chen had already appeared in front of Fushier and volleyed. Boom boom boom. The continuous explosions came from Fushier flying upside down as he smashed through the trees. This bastard, the power has become stronger again. And the speed is also. Feedback from one after another, faces, around him. Fu Hieshi noticed the black shadow galloping towards him as fast as lightning. In the middle of the air without any support, in an almost impossible way, the second vacation caused his body to move up half a meter abruptly. Passed by Lu Chen, who delivered a lightning-like blow. Lu Chen seemed to be unaffected by gravity, and directly stuck his feet under the high-altitude horizontal tree trunk, just hanging upside down in midair. Fu Hieshi rolled his back for 2.5 weeks and landed on the ground, stunned by Lu Chen's movements, but he didn't hesitate in the attack. At this point, the two started a new round of fierce battles that continued to increase in intensity. At this time, Kuju Yuki was concentrating on the direction of the battle. I feel lucky in my heart. I didn't immediately return to Tokyo to deal with my own affairs after meeting Lu Chen once. Instead, he chose to return all the way with Lu Chen and others. Only in this way can he witness the battle that can be called the culmination in the world. Even, 99 Yuji narrowed his eyes slightly, and a mad smile appeared on his pretty face. She herself was inspired by the battle between the two of them with a strong fighting spirit. As a power born from negative emotions that exercises mantra, it is also a special class that has honed mantra and jujutsu to an extremely high level. In her bones, she also has the characteristics of war and madness. It's just that there are so few existences who can enjoy fighting with the special class, so few that they can be counted on one hand. After a while, this thought flashed through Juju Yuki's mind again, and gradually subsided. Forget it anyway. Of these two guys, one was extremely motivated to fight, and the other was more interested than ever before. If it is mixed in, even if you have strong confidence in yourself, it may be quite bad. Besides, don't look at the fact that the battle has already reached the point where such a special level will be quite dangerous to enter it. But 99 Yuki knew that this was still not all of the two of them. Those cursed tools from Zenon. Lu Jun's eyes made me feel trembling from the soul. In the woods, Lu Chen and Fu Hieshi formed a battlefield. After a period of time, they were no longer evenly matched, but were gradually suppressed by Lu Chen. This is not because of the decline of Fu Hieshi's physical strength and senses with the passage of time. Those chromatographic levels do make Fu Hieshi close to Lu Chen's Sharingan at the level of insight into movements. Relying on this point, many attacks were dodged. But this is not enough to make Fu Hieshi truly comparable to Lu Chen's Sharingan. And, on top of that, there is also a big gap between Fu Hieshi's physical skills and Lu Chen's. It should be noted that Lu Chen's taijutsu originated from Uchiha Madara, who has overwhelmed tens of thousands of ninja allied forces with one man. The unrivaled skill that has been honed after thousands of battles in the confrontation with Senjuhura, who is the god of ninja. Although Fu Hieshi was once thrown into the cursed spirit cave at Zenon's house, he has experienced many life and death, and he can be called the pinnacle of physical body and the best physical skills. But there is still an essential gap with Uchiha Madara's taijutsu. Even Lu Chen's inheritance rate is only 35.2%. As the battle progressed, Fu Hieshi did not show any further strength, which also made Lu Chen's interest gradually weaken. The excitement and arrogance on the expression also gradually subsided, and a little calmed down. The pair of sharing eyes that captured all of Fu Hieshi's movements drew two blood-red flame tails between the interlaced movements. Is there any way to suppress the bottom of the box? Catching Fu Hieshi's blow with one hand and hitting the sound of the sonic boom, Lu Chen asked. What do you guys mean? The blow didn't work, and while Fu Hieshi spoke, his movements were still not at all sluggish. He took a step back and shattered the ground with his right foot. A huge clod of soil lay between the two of them, only their eyes were exposed, looking at each other. Even though his body was bombarded dozens of times during the battle, his astonishing physique was not seriously injured. Speed, reaction, strength, etc. are still maintained at the peak state. A little tired. Faint words came from Lu Chen, whose sight was obscured by stones. Then, Fu Hieshi, who was about to punch with all his strength, a sharp pain that he hadn't felt for many years severely stimulated his nerves. Cough. Blood spurted directly from Fu Hieshi's mouth. He lowered his head, only to see that before he could even react, the stone in front of his abdomen had been pierced by Lu Chen's fist. And that punch had already landed directly on his abdomen. Visible to the naked eye, his inhuman body, which is impossible to be hurt by swords, gold and iron, has a deep fist mark sunken downward. Then, as if a mighty force erupted, he flew upside down uncontrollably. This time, it directly smashed an unknown number of trees, flew hundreds of meters away, and smashed into the depths of the forest. Slap. In the smoke and dust, Lu Chen, who instantly spanned a distance of hundreds of meters, appeared in front of Fu Hieshi, who was crushed by the giant tree roots. Rumble. Fu Hieshi, who was crushed by the broken tree whose roots were stacked together, had a look of shock on his face. The body burst out with terrifying strange force, and all the heavy objects on the body bounced off. Accompanied by the sound of the giant tree falling to the ground, Fu Hieshi stood up. You bastard. Is this your real strength? Fu Hieshi covered the abdomen that was hit just now with one hand, and there was still a clear fist mark there. The other hand touched the bloodstains on the corner of his mouth. This was the first time he was truly injured in this battle, other than being affected by Long Yan Song when he underestimated the enemy at the beginning. It was also the first time in a physical competition, the first time he suffered a serious injury, and it was just a punch. You should be faster and stronger, but you don't seem to realize it. Lu Chen didn't respond, but said to Fu Hieshi instead. What? Fu Hiershi's expression was startled. Thanks to your heavenly restriction, your 5 senses have been strengthened to a rare level in the world. Among the people I know in this world, you can be called the strongest. Even with your amazing 5 senses, you have already approached my Sharingan at the level of insight into actions. However, your actions themselves are far inferior to your 5 senses. While grasping those things, can't we use those things that are already within reach? Lu Chen's Sharingan reflected the figure of Fushir. Or, standing on the peak for so long that you forgot to keep climbing? These words resounded in Fu Hieishi's mind like a thunderbolt. This made this heaven and tyrant, who had already stood on almost the highest peak in the entire Jujutsu world, set off a huge wave in his heart. With the characteristics of heavenly restriction, he himself has experienced many life and death in Zenon's house. It has been tempered to this point, and even won the title of Sorcerer Killer, which is equivalent to a nightmare for a magician, and almost no one can have it. Even today's birth in this world means the birth of the strongest, with the 6 eyes, and no lower limit spell. Gojo Satoru, who already has super strength at the age of 16. Fu Hieisher also has more than 80% certainty to kill the opponent. This is also after not knowing about the astral body that Lu Chen was traveling with. I expected that Jujutsu High School would even send Gojo Satoru to protect Riko Amane. The reason why he still dared to accept the assassination mission. In today's Jujutsu world, the god and tyrant named Fushir is undoubtedly at the highest level. This also made him subconsciously think that he had developed his own strength to the extreme. He has developed his own heaven and tyrant at the cost of sacrificing all his mana power to the peak. If an idiot who popped out casually said that in front of him, he would definitely smash it to pieces without hesitation. But at this moment, the person who said these words was Lu Chen, who was severely injured by his punch after he had publicly raised his overall strength to the extreme by using magic techniques. Fu Hieisher couldn't help asking himself, is the current self really the limit of oneself? Has he really reached the end himself? The brain involuntarily began to diverge, and a flash of inspiration flashed in his mind. Like a ray of light in the darkness, it made him feel a little bit, but he still couldn't really feel it. But at this moment, Lu Chen spoke again. You should still have the means to press the bottom of the box, take them all out? Yes. Did Lu Jian win? Seeing Lu Chen standing in front of Fu Hieisher intact, and Fu Hieisher had already been severely injured. Iori Utahime couldn't help but speak. She also didn't expect that in this battle, even Mei Mei, who was a higher level than her, would not even be qualified to watch this battle. Such uncertain conclusions can only be drawn from the present situation. That's right. Looking at the battle situation in the distance, Juju Yuji's eyes flashed with shock. She regained her senses, and then slowly opened her mouth to speak. Completely zero mana power. Fushir is truly a Superman on the physical level. Moreover, in this battle, Fushir even used intelligence disclosure to further enhance the overall strength. But still lost to Lu Chen in the physical contest. Lu Chen's sudden outburst of terrifying power and teleportation-like speed just now made her unable to react. Only the final picture of Fushir falling to the ground can be seen. But from the current results, it can already be seen that Lu Chen is already the winner in this appalling battle of unimaginable scale. 99 UG did not think that Lu Chen, whose strength is unfathomable and not an exaggeration, would be better than Fushir. However, that was all based on the fact that Lu Chen showed those eyes that made her soul shudder. But he didn't expect that Lu Chen's own strength, even if he didn't reveal those terrifying eyes, was already suppressing Fushir in terms of hard power. Fushir's strength doesn't stop there. As Fushir, who has no magic power at all, in order to deal with many situations, he has collected many powerful special-grade cursed tools. If we say that Fushir after the information was released is in the most powerful physical state, then, Fushir, who holds the many special-grade cursed tools he collected, is the most powerful person who has displayed the most complete and peak strength. This is also the situation that Juju Yoji thinks can make Lu Chen reproduce the pair of kaleidoscopes. But now it seems that she has lost her sight. To be precise, she greatly underestimated Lu Chen's strength. Judging from the present, the kind of comprehensive strength that can already crush Fushir. Even if Fu Hieisher took out those cursed tools, it probably wouldn't be able to pose much threat to Lu Chen. Not to mention forcing Lu Chen to reveal those pupils full of curse, destruction and ominousness. However, when she thought so, a feeling of palpitations, like the bloodthirsty mouth of an ancient fierce beast, suddenly emerged in her heart, causing her soul to tremble uncontrollably. At the same time, Both Iori Utahime and Mei Mei also recalled the terrifying and suffocating sense of oppression they felt in the cool house. You should still have the means to suppress the bottom of the box, such as. Lu Chen stared at Fushir, who was covering the attacked position with one hand, and then moved his gaze to the latter's abdomen. The thing in your belly. You bastard. It's terrifying. Sensing Lu Chen's gaze as if he had seen through himself and peeped into something inside his body, Fu Hieishi's body paused, and a gleam of disbelief flashed in his eyes. Then, with a drop of sweat on his face, he smiled. Where did you come from, such a monster? 6 eyes. Gojo Satoru is probably far worse than you. Saying so, under Lu Chen's slightly weird eyes, Fu Hieisher opened his mouth, and a small meatball landed in his palm. It was a 3rd-level cursed spirit with a huge different dimensional space inside its body. After being captured and tamed by Fu Hieisher, it is used to store many rare cursed tools collected by Fu Hieisher. On weekdays, it is curled up and shrunk, swallowed by Fu Hieisher, with a body that shields the cursed spirit's magic power, so that the magic power perception cannot detect its existence. At the same time, it also maintains Fu Hieisher's own, completely spell-free, characteristics. Even the 6 eyes, that can see through the magic formula and directly track the trajectory of the magic power, it is absolutely impossible to find it. But still can't escape Lu Chen's eyes. It was intended to be taken out after you used the weapon. Weapons are naturally a part of strength, but Fu Hieisher, who has an unruly personality, originally wanted to take out the weapon after Lu Chen first took it out, and then take it out to determine the attribution of victory. After all, fighting with proud flesh. When neither side uses weapons, whoever takes the lead does not mean that the side thinks that without the use of weapons, it has no certainty of victory. Perhaps, you have misunderstood me. Watching the cursed spirit in Fushir's hand growing bigger and entwined around Fushir's body, Lu Chen spoke slowly. Fu Hieisher paused for taking out his cursed tool. The result of this battle has not been in suspense from the moment I am here. It's just that I'm looking forward to how many surprises you can bring me and how much interest you can make me. The corner of Lu Chen's mouth raised a slight arc, and there was a hint of joy in his eyes looking at Fu Hieisher. For the first time, I felt a little joy in fighting, and it was barely enough for me to enjoy myself. So, I decided to show you something different. The majestic and vast chakra contained in Lu Chen's body roared violently the moment Lu Chen closed his eyes. A blue flame of chakra rose from Lu Chen's body surface. Lu Chen's hair and clothes were windless and automatic, as if they were being pulled by some force. Fu Hieisher's eyes widened, and Lu Chen's body crazily hit him with a powerful aura, causing him to block himself with one arm, and his feet also plowed 2 1-meter-long slits on the ground. Mark. The body exploded with stronger strength to stop the body that kept sliding backwards. It's not because I want to continue fighting that I ask you to come up with the means to suppress the bottom of the box. Instead, faint words sounded from Lu Chen's mouth. Lu Chen slowly opened his eyes. The pattern in it is the straight-hooked jade kaleidoscope riding sharing eyes of 3 hooked jades at the head and tail. At the same time, the chakra flames that floated on Lu Chen's body surface and roared like a beast burned even more intensely. As the blue chakra flames rose up, a half-length giant with a blue body and a Shira-like face broke through the blue flames. With a roar that pierced the sky, a strong storm swept from Lu Chen's body burning with chakra flames in all directions. Layers of airwaves rippled under his feet, impacting everything around him. Fu Hieisher plowed 2 long marks on the ground, and with a sudden force, he stopped the sliding body. As Lu Chen opened his eyes, the pattern of straight-hooked jade connected to the first place appeared in the pupils. The blue chakra that seemed to burn everything suddenly rose up like a volcanic eruption. A half-length giant including Lu Chen was formed, about 4 stories high, blue in the whole body, with a face like Asura ghosts and gods, with clear ribs. The moment this half-body Shira appeared, he looked up to the sky and roared, making a roar that went straight into the sky. Roar. The strong atmosphere of ominousness, destruction, curse, etc. gathered into a suffocating sense of oppression, making everything around fall into silence. Only this roar echoed in the forest. A creepy aura swept the area unscrupulously from Lu Chen, who was holding his arms among the ghosts of Shira. Even the women who were watching the battle in the enchantment barrier in the distance were trembling uncontrollably. The strong and substantial ominous and cursed atmosphere washed over their hearts over and over again. The Shira giant, which was full of visual impact and seemed to represent destruction itself, swept their minds even more. This is what it was then. Iori Utahime's mind went blank, recalling the chilling power he felt from the cool house. Is this kind of power really something that humans can possess? Mei, who has always been mature and steady, opened her eyes wide in shock, unable to recover for a long time. Even from such a distance, he could feel the destructive power that could destroy everything in the world from Lu Chen's body and the half-body ghost at this moment. So that's it. It turns out that this is the true gesture that was never shown at that time. Looking at Lu Chen in the distance, who seems to be on the sky, looking down on everything in the world with a high attitude, and the giant Shura surrounding Lu Chen who envelops him. Beads of sweat dripped down the face of Juju Yuki involuntarily. The pupils reflected Lu Chen's figure with the Susanoo outstretched, and the shock was beyond compare. Just at this moment, Lu Chen's continuously surging and terrifying aura created an irresistible pressure on her. It's hard to imagine how high Lu Chen, who has truly exerted such strength, has reached. Even 99 Yuji silently had an intuition in his heart that even in his current form, it was still not Lu Chen's limit. I couldn't help thinking like this. In this world, is there really such a power that is so powerful that it exceeds the common sense of the Jujutsu world? Now, in the battlefield, facing Lu Chen with Susanoo unfolded head-on, the coercion that Fushire needs to admit is far beyond what the girls in the distance can imagine. After the initial trance, Fu Hieishi's muscles were all knotted, and he was under the oppression. He stared fixedly at Lu Chen, who was standing among the blue Shura with folded arms, with an indifferent expression as if standing above the sky. Grinning his mouth, he revealed a wild and crazy smile that he had never seen before. Monster. No, monsters are not enough to describe you. As the underground emperor, the sorcerer killer who made Jujutsu fearful, heaven and tyrant, Fushire. Even in the face of Lu Chen who opened the kaleidoscope at this time, which made his extreme five senses scream fiercely, he still did not retreat in the slightest. Astroboko Wanli Lock 2 cursed tools were taken out from the mouth of the cursed spirit in the arsenal, all of which were special-grade cursed tools. Fu Hieisher hooked the shackle of Wanlasuo to the tail of the Tianihoko, like throwing a shot put, dancing the Wanlasuo to drive the Tianihoko, sending out screams piercing the sky. Under the dance of the Tenihoko, the surrounding ground was cut with long and criss-crossing marks. In essence, this battle is not simply a task of assassinating the astral body. In other words, after learning that there was Lu Chen beside the astral body, accepting the mission completely became an incidental relationship. Whoosh! Fu Hieishi's figure disappeared, and the dancing Tianihoko shot straight into the sky under the nature of the 10,000 Li Lock, can extend infinitely without seeing the end. Accompanied by Fu Hieishi's supernatural power, it turned into a black shadow from top to bottom, and directly hit the top of the ghost's half-body. Boom! The Tianihoko, which contained special mantra power, slammed heavily on the head of Shura ghosts and gods, but it didn't cause the slightest wave. Lu Chen's expression was calm, and he spoke slowly. When the pupil power of Sharingan is improved, its form will also show the number of hook jade from low to high. Sanguyu is a bottleneck for ordinary Sharingan. And when the pupil power exceeds that limit, the Sanguyu will enter another realm that is separated from the sky, Kaleidoscope Sharingan. Kaleidoscopic Sharingan. Is it your eyes that look more like curse than curse? While speaking, Fu Hieisher was still moving at extreme speed, and he kept waving the Wanli Lock to control the Tianihoko, leaning all over Kanglan Shura's body like a storm. However, none of them worked. Tisk, the Tenihoko that can forcibly interrupt the spell can't break you at all, it really isn't Jujutsu. Fu Hieisher appeared 20 meters away to Lu Chen's right and clicked his tongue. Put the Tianihoko back into the mouth of cursed spirit in the arsenal. Wanlasuo also put it back, and took out a 3-section cudgel that reflected light. Yu Yun, it is still a special grade cursed tool, which was bought by Fushire for 500 million. It does not have any spells and curses, and its effects are not as unique as Tianihoko and Wanlasuo. Yu Yun has only one role, and that is, the power is only related to the user's arm strength. It can be said that in terms of performance, the cursed tool is most suitable for the peak of the body. After opening the kaleidoscope with both eyes, you can get the ultimate power residing in the kaleidoscope Sharingan. The power of God, Susanoo. Lu Chen's posture at the moment is defiant, looking down on all living beings. Just like Susanoo, the supreme ghost and god of Shura, the interior of the skull is azure blue. It raised its head slightly, and a bright blue light burst out from its hands. The long sword with a blue light and a curved blade broke through the blue light, and was held in both hands by the First Order Susan. The power of God, it's really scary. Hearing that indifferent voice, he stared at Lu Chen, the Supreme King, with his arms folded as if he ruled over everything. Fu Hieisher held one end of Yu Yun with one hand, and the other side of Yu Yun with the other, and placed the middle part of the three joints in front of him. Just let me see it. Breathe. Fu Hieisher's chest heaved greatly, adjusting his state to the best. Holding Yu Yun in his hand, he assumed the sharpest fighting posture. The power of God is really a scary title. Let me see if your so-called divine power is true. Fu Hieisher's scarred mouth showed a crazy and ferocious smile, and his whole body shot towards Lu Chen at a speed that broke the sound barrier. There was only a large pit with a diameter of several meters left on the spot, which showed the astonishing power of Fu Hieisher, who broke out at such a speed. It's just that, under the kaleidoscope Sharingan, this kind of speed appears in Lu Chen's eyes as if he is moving in slow motion. As Fu Hieisher approached at a high speed, Lu Chen still had his arms folded. Because you let me barely enjoy myself, let you experience the power of this Susanoo for yourself. As for asking you to come up with the means to suppress the bottom of the box, it's just two. Shu Zuo, who was in the first order form, slashed at Fu Hieisher, who was attacking directly with the azure blue curved sword in his hand. The terrifying force directly formed a raging gust of wind, blowing away all the surrounding objects. With such an extreme speed of action in a short distance of tens of meters, even if Fu Hieisher wanted as much as he wanted, it was too late. Fu Hieisher, who was moving at a high speed, felt a strong sense of suffocation coming. He showed a crazy expression, his arms were raised, and his veins were exposed. Yu Yun, whose power is determined by the strength of his arms, unleashes the most terrifying power in the hands of the heavenly and tyrant who is the pinnacle of physicality in the world. The huge blue light curved sword of the First Order Susan collided with the Yuan that Fu Hieisher hit with all his strength. Boom. Like the deafening explosion that dozens of shells bombarded here together, it exploded suddenly. Under the impact of the ultimate force, the earth shattered into gullies. The strong earthquake spread to hundreds of meters away. In the blurry blue light, a black shadow flew upside down from the light and thick dust. In the blink of an eye, the black shadow ran through the entire forest, and finally smashed into the foot of a hill outside the forest. Boom boom boom. All obstacles along the way, whether it's a big tree or a boulder, or a beast of prey, or a sporadic cursed spirit cruising in the distant woods. No one was spared, and all were smashed to pieces. The sounds of collisions and collapses can be heard endlessly. Even the last hill trembled a few times the moment it was hit by the black shadow. A few hundred meters away, looking at Fu Hieisher, who was deeply embedded in a cross on the hill, motionless, Lu Chen continued the previous words lightly. Let you try your best to protect your life. So, have you reached your limit? Fu Hieisher, who had been motionless as if he had no life, opened the corner of his mouth hidden under the shadow again. His body kept shaking, causing Xiao Shan to tremble a little again. Slap. Finally, Fu Hieisher got rid of the squeeze embedded in the mountain and hit the ground with his head. Cough, cough. Fu Hieisher coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood, grabbed Yu Yun, who was lying on the ground with some difficulty, and stood up with support. Where Yu Yun had previously collided, a small crack had already appeared. Moreover, the body seemed to be falling apart, and it was already screaming unbearably overwhelmed. Fu Hieisher didn't realize it at all. Instead, his innocent face was full of madness and excitement. It's still far away. Fu Hieisher has obviously reached the limit, but he has shown a more ferocious explosive power than at the peak moment. It was as if an inexplicable energy was born from the environment around him, and it continuously blessed this heaven and tyrant. Aware of Fu Hieisher's state at this moment, Lu Chen's indifferent expression showed a small unexpected fluctuation. I see. A glimpse of clarity appeared in Lu Chen's eyes. The more turbulent chakra surged up Susanoo, and multiple blue goads were connected together by a fluctuating blue line, rotating at high speed between the front and back of Susanoo's arm. Gudama of Yasaka. For some reason, Fu Hieisher, who erupted with stronger power, swung Yu Yun again. Crack. This time, there was no evenly matched collision, no stalemate for even a second. The moment they collided, the indestructible supergrade cursed tool Yu Yun, which represented the highest level in the Jujutsu world, made a crisp sound under Yasaka's hook jade. Immediately, it turned into fragments like fragile glass and was swallowed by this attack. The blue light of Yasaka Guyu shone on Fu Hieisher's wide-eyed face, and Fu Hieisher was also covered by the strong and dazzling light. It doesn't end there. The blow of multiple Guyu connected together hit the mountain that Fu Hieisher had hit before. The world seemed to have come to a standstill at this moment, leaving only the dazzling white light. It illuminates Lu Chen's face, and also illuminates the incredible and shocking faces of Juju Yuji and other women. Immediately afterwards, boom! It was like thousands of beating drums releasing explosions together, resounding through the entire sky. That force, like divine punishment, completely tilted on the hill, and the incomparable impact caused the clouds in the sky to be shattered in an instant. Cloudless. And below, after the deafening roar ended, the dazzling light dissipated. I saw that the small hill standing on the edge of the forest disappeared out of thin air as if it had been erased from the paper by an eraser. All that was left was the bare and potholed piece of empty land. It expresses silently that there used to be a small mountain that cannot be ignored. Gudong. The entire area of several miles around was completely silent. Under the protection of the magic barrier set up by Kujuyuki, the aftermath of Suzunoko's 2 attacks did not hurt anyone here. However, looking at the vacancy formed after the small mountain that was erased out of thin air, everyone swallowed their saliva at the same time, their expressions were shocked, and they could not speak for a long time. In that attack, like a map cannon, it directly wiped out a small mountain from the shocking performance of this world. After a long time, the girls who stayed in the spell barrier set up by 99 Yuji finally came back to their senses. Gudong. In the silent atmosphere, the sound of a swallowing throat wriggling was very clearly audible. This kind of thing is too foul. Iori Utahim's brain is still a little blank, looking at Lu Chen, who looks down on all living beings and lives among the ghosts and spirits from a distance. Too beyond common sense. No, Mr. Lu himself is not even within the common sense of the Jujutsu world for thousands of years. A drop of crystal sweat dripped down from Mei Mei's delicate cheeks, and dripped to the ground along the contours of her face. Thinking back to meeting Lu Chen twice, and the feedback and knowledge I got from Lu Chen. That unfathomable strength like an abyss broke their impressions and cognitions time and time again. And the power of all knowledge and common sense that is completely different from the Jujutsu world that has been passed down for thousands of years from ancient times to the present. The existence of Lu Chen is no longer an existence that can be measured by the standards in the Jujutsu world. Thump. Kuroi Misato, who was behind Iori Utahime and other Jujutsu masters, staggered directly. After witnessing the amazing power that ordinary hot weapons couldn't do, his body lost his strength and he knelt down on the ground. His eyes stared blankly at the large bare land after a small mountain peak was completely wiped out of his field of vision, as if punished by God. Master Lu Chen. As a girl whose physique is no different from ordinary people, Amana Riko's reaction is not much better than that of Kuroi Misato. However, a force emerged from her heart, causing her heart to beat more heavily and powerfully than usual. Tianai Riko stood where she was, and did not fall to the ground. The girl's eyes were wide open, and an imperceptible murmur came from her slightly trembling lips. That astonishing power, as well as Lu Chen's well-deserved, God-like peerless posture, were deeply imprinted in the girl's heart. Never forget. Chakra, Sharingan, Kaleidoscope, Divine Power Susanoo. Lu Chen. Who the hell are you? Looking at Lu Chen with his arms folded, his invincible courage and domineering posture fully displayed, 99 Yuji trembled violently in his heart. All he could think of was Lu Chen's power that was completely different from mana when he was fighting. That kind of power made Lu Chen's overall quality completely surpass the strongest body of the Heaven and Tyrant, Fushir bought at the price of completely zero mana power. Whether it's the kind of thing called ninjutsu, Lu Chen's own physical skills, or the pair of Susanos that are not exaggerated to say that they are divine power. As a special class, she knows better than anyone present that Lu Chen is an exerciser who is completely different from the power system of the Jujutsu world. What does the existence itself that breaks the cognition of the Jujutsu world mean? That is, in the future, it is very possible to break the existence of the stable pattern that has been formed in the Jujutsu world for at least thousands of years. Even can completely change the world. Call. Lu Chen was located at the absolute center of the battlefield, or rather the entire forest riddled with holes. Slowly closing his eyes, the turbulent chakra torrent in his body, which was like a stormy sea, gradually calmed down. The blue Asura ghostly half-body Susanoo that wrapped Lu Chen also disappeared without a trace. If you have never seen Lu Chen in the picture just now, you would never have thought that Lu Chen is the one who wiped out a hill and everything in the path ahead. Lu Chen lowered his arms, and opened the Sharingan that had returned to Sanguyu. That absolute powerhouse, like the indifference and arrogance of the heavens, the aura that no one can ignore is also gone. Slap. A piece of crushed stone at his feet made a crisp sound, and Lu Chen's figure crossed a distance of tens of meters and came to a pile of rubble. In the pile of rubble and dust piled together, a gurgling blood flowed out, soaking the surrounding earth. And from it, there is also a human palm, revealing the edge of the stone pile. Still alive? Looking down at the pile of rubble, Lu Chen seemed to have seen the scene below through layers of rocks and dust. The corner of his mouth raised slightly in an arc full of interest. Accompanied by Lu Chen's words, the rough and wide palm moved slightly. Immediately. Clatter. The power that emerged from below forced away the heavy rocks and soil above, revealing the figure of the strong middle-aged man who was crushed there. Ha. Ha. Cough cough cough. Surrounded by debris and wreckage of Yuyan, Fu Hieisher's whole body seemed to be broken and shattered. He turned over from lying on his stomach to lying down, and then he lay there limp. At this moment, Fu Hieisher's breathing was weak and disordered, and he coughed violently from time to time. He resisted the severe pain that suffocated him and constantly swept through his nerves, and showed an extremely reluctant but quite rebellious smile. It's still. Cough, still use. To say. Cough cough cough. Fu Hieisher, who couldn't say a word, was full of excitement and satisfaction in his eyes. It's not just because he survived the blow that would definitely kill even his body, which had been strengthened to the limit by the disclosure of information just now. But because. Break through that boundary. Lu Chen raised his brows, but his expression was not the slightest bit surprised or unhappy. On the contrary, that handsome face was full of joy. You bastard. Cough cough cough. As soon as he spoke, he would move his bruised body, but Fu Hieisher resisted the unbearable pain that was more intense than piercing heart, and said that sentence. He lay among the stones, watching the sun gradually set in the west and the cloudless sky. I really can't escape the eyes of this bastard. When facing Guyu of Yasaka at the end, the speed Fu Hieisher showed. It was from this blow that he felt the almost certain death threat of being thrown into the cursed spirit cave when he was a child. Thus touching the boundaries of oneself, and then bursting out of power. But that was only the effect of a flash of inspiration from Lu Chen when he realized that he had reached the point where he was now and started to stagnate. Fu Hieisher knows. At that time, he hadn't really broken through that boundary. So, with a heart that was almost mortal, he faced the Yasaka Guyu that the blue line of sight occupied the entire field of vision. Through Lu Chen's words, and the Guyu of Yasaka that contains the power of destruction. Fu Hieisher foresaw the boundary of himself, and touched it. However, it is still not enough. Fu Hieisher's own heart has been distorted because of the experience of the Zenin family since he was a child, even if he has reached the current height. Because, the real idea in his heart is to stand at the absolute highest point in the entire Jujutsu world. Let this mantra be with Jujutsu supremacy to the Zenin family, the entire Jujutsu world. Look at how he, a monkey, who doesn't even have the power of mantra, stepped on the heads of these Jujutsu masters. Become the strongest contemporary in the entire Jujutsu world. Fu Hieisher had an intuition in his heart. As long as he can break through this boundary, then he must be able to surpass Six Eyes, who represents the strongest from the level of his own essence. He could even catch up with the monster in front of him. Therefore, in the face of the oncoming, one blow that can completely kill him. The existence named Heaven and Tyrant showed the arrogance and determination of his powerhouse. If he could not break the boundary that he had already touched with this blow, then, he would die. And at the moment when Yu Yun was shattered by that earth-shattering blow, life and death were on the line. He finally broke through that layer of boundaries. The world in his eyes became more pure and clear, and all the layers began to faintly move with his body as the center. It was also at that moment, by breaking your own limits, breaking your own boundaries. Fu Hieisher, who was at the moment of dying, gathered those faces to his surroundings to the limit. I overloaded my body, which was already a little overwhelmed, and moved it out, brushing past Yasaka's Guyu. Even so, it was also affected by its power. But what makes this moment so dying? The more reason is that the body is overwhelmed by overdrive after realizing the breakthrough of its own boundaries. Fu Hieisher, who survived at this moment and looked up at the sky, felt unprecedented satisfaction and excitement. If the previous him faced that Six Eyes, Gojo Satoru, he still needed to use tricks to weaken him. Those who are now facing the Gojo Satoru who is in a full state, Fu Hieisher has 100% certainty to crush and kill the Gojo Satoru whose birthday means the birth of the strongest. The current him, his strength can be said to have undergone earth-shaking changes. It seems that breaking that layer of boundaries has given you a lot of rewards. Looking at Fushir, who healed himself with a faster physical recovery speed than before, Lu Chen raised his eyebrows. It's really sarcastic, but I paid for it with my life. He grinned, developed his own power of heaven and tyrant, and further strengthened his body to recover from his injuries. Fushir can at least maintain a normal speech, even though it still causes intense pain, indeed. Lu Chen agrees with this point. Risks come with opportunities, and Fushir's ability to achieve such an essential leap is also due to the fact that the latter dared to gamble with his life. If the latter didn't win the bet, then he would only become a wisp of dust under his Yasaka Guyu. Or, Fu Hieishi's mouth with scars and scabbed blood opened to the maximum extent, and his vision moved from the sky to Lu Chen, who was looking at him from top to bottom. Are you scared? Afraid? The corners of Lu Chen's mouth raised, showing a smile full of arrogance. Is the injury already hallucinating? Tisk. Fushir wanted to refute. However, looking at the red-eyed bastard looking down at him. At least for now, he has fully recovered, and thinking back to Susanoo, who was like a ghost in God Shura, he still doesn't have much confidence. No, it is precisely because I have surpassed the original level now. Only then can I get a glimpse of the horror of the bastard in front of me, as well as the ominous and creepy power in those eyes that look like Curse himself. Even now, against this bastard, he still can't win. However, not necessarily in the future. It's really different. When you appear in front of me next time, I hope to see you continue dancing. In Sanguyu's riding wheel eyes, Fushir, who is riddled with holes but is healing faster than the reversal technique, is reflected. Moreover, one can faintly see that Fushir's physique is slowly becoming stronger. Lu Chen's eyes showed more interest, and the corners of his mouth curled up. This guy seems to have gained a lot of strength, and the next meeting may make him more enjoyable and carefree. After finishing speaking, Lu Chen turned and left, walking towards Jujutsu and others who had lifted the enchantment barrier. What are you talking about dancing, you bastard? Fu Hieisher is not used to remembering other men's names. However, looking at the back of the young man who was walking away, Fu Hieisher remembered a person's name just once for the first time. Speak out. Lu Chen, Lu Jun. It seems that I am very satisfied this time. Seeing Lu Chen approaching, Jujuyoji was the first to go up to him. Not bad. Lu Chen put one hand in his trouser pocket, with a cheerful expression full of interest. After all, the previous battles were not even up to the level of warm-up, but here Fu Hieisher let him show some strength. Of course, it was only part of it, and it was the completion of this confrontation, which was barely considered a battle. Okay, let's go. As Lu Chen's voice fell, no one said anything more, followed behind Lu Chen, and left here. After all, without Lu Chen, all the people here except Jujutsu would be wiped out. Moreover, after seeing Lu Chen's astonishing power, Kuroi Misato respected and awed Lu Chen even more. Even if Lu Chen hadn't wiped out Fushir, who came from Miss Riko in the astral body, she wouldn't be able to say anything more. As for Riko Tenny, her mind was on Lu Chen from the beginning to the end, and she didn't pay attention to whether Fu Hieisher, who fell there, was dead or alive. Iori Utahime and Mei Mei will also not do unnecessary things to each other. After an unknown amount of time, Lu Chen and his daughters had already left. Only Fushir was left lying here. A figure approached from the woods and came to Fu Hieisher's side. Fu Hei, it looks like he lost, and the chopsticks, also. A figure approached Volheschel. Fu Hei, it looks like I lost. Stop saying those sarcastic remarks. Fu Hieisher turned over and sat up, looking at his partner Kong Shiyu with an unhappy expression. This time it seems to be a complete failure, and even your cursed tool. You have no idea how perverted that bastard is. Hearing Fu Hieisher's words, Kong Shiyu was even more surprised. Then I saw Fu Hieisher pointing his finger behind him. Following the direction pointed by the former, Kong Shiyu saw the large open space. Around the clearing, there are arched gravel and trees. He took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth, and asked inexplicably. What happened to that clearing? Before fighting that bastard, there was a mountain there. Just as Kong Shiyu took out the lighter and was about to ignite it, he stopped in midair, and the flame was still burning. He opened his eyes wide and looked at the large open space. No one could imagine that there was a small mountain there. This middle-aged man, who had experienced many things, had cold sweat on his face. Hey, this joke is not funny at all. Do you think I'm joking? Fu Hieisher stood up, looked at some pieces of Yu Yun's wreckage, and said. Yu Yun is a special grade cursed tool that cost me 500 million yuan to buy, but it's lucky to be able to survive that level of attack. This is really. Originally, I was still expecting, but this time Fushir went all out, even that 6 eyes might die. In the final analysis, the scale of the confrontation in the restaurant was too small. Being able to see something is extremely limited. For Fu Hieishi's attack this time, there will definitely be a quite thrilling and fierce fight, and the outcome is unpredictable. But it turned out that he might have underestimated that young man's strength too much. And, listening to Fu Hieishi's words, the method of erasing the entire hill as if out of thin air was just a blow from that young man. Thinking of this, Kong Shiyu lowered his head slightly, trying to force himself to light a cigarette calmly. But the trembling hand, which showed the extreme unrest in his heart, couldn't point the flame at the cigarette anyway. However, compared to the gains this time, the loss of a special cursed tool is quite worth it. Looking at the wreckage on the ground, a trace of pain flashed in Fu Hieishi's eyes. But feeling the leap and change on his own level, his heart is full of unprecedented satisfaction. The assassination mission failed this time. If those guys from the Pangxing sect want to seek death again, let them go. It can only be like this. After trying many times, Kong Shiyu couldn't light the cigarette in his mouth, so Kong Shiyu just gave up. Putting the lighter back into his trouser pocket, he threw the cigarette on the ground and crushed it flat with one foot. There is uncertainty in the commission, not to mention the participation of that kind of terrifying monster. The result of the battle is here. Kong Shiyu can only give up the entrustment of the Pangxing sect. The follow-up full salary will definitely not be available. Although it is a bit regrettable, after all, commissions with a deposit of 30 million yuan and full remuneration exceeding 100 million yuan are quite rare. However, thinking of the terrifying existence he would face if he wanted to continue completing the commission, Kong Shiyu took another look at the huge open space. He doesn't do things that seek death. The deposit this time is also quite expensive, enough to squander for a while. Fu Hieisher is going to use the 30 million deposit to be unrestrained and unrestrained. With a dazed expression, a figure of a little boy flashed in his mind. The side face and eyes of that little boy were somewhat similar to him. It seems that I can go back and have a look. At this time, Kong Shiyu suddenly remembered something, and looked at Fu Hieisher. That's right, Fuhei. Huh? Remember to make up for the money you owed me before from your deposit. Fu Hieisher. Tokyo Metropolitan Jujutsu High School. The majestic and magnificent gate can already be seen from a distance. After the battle was over, Liu Chen and the others traveled unimpeded along the way without encountering any obstacles. I won't be with you anymore. 99 Yuki stopped, crossing her slender waist with one hand. Aren't you going to see Tian Yuan? Liu Chen looked at the latter. After all, Jujuyuki is also an astral body. I don't want to see that old thing. Although he hates those old-fashioned and decadent high-ranking officials, Jujuyuki hates Tianyuan, who arbitrarily ordered those girls to be astral bodies and shouldered a heavy mission since childhood. That's it. I'm going to collect information on that thing. Liu Jun, congratulations in advance on what you've gained from Tian Yuan. I'll come back to you later. 99 Ug had a curvy figure, closed one eye to Liu Chen, and said in a slightly playful and provocative way. Afterwards, he greeted the other girls. As he turned to leave, his gaze swept over Riko Tenouchi's slightly reluctant face. In the cool house, Liu Chen's words that he would not let Riko Tenouchi be assimilated by Tian Yuan echoed in his ears. If Tian Yuan cannot assimilate, then it will evolve into an existence beyond human beings. But the shocking scene before, as well as Liu Chen's invincible posture above everything, are all vivid in his memory. Even after Tianyuan truly evolved, he became the enemy of human beings. If the existence he was facing was Liu Chen, he might not be able to make waves at all. As a former astral body, and the only person in the world who can hear the sound of the astral body coming out of Tian Yuan's body after being assimilated by Tian Yuan, 99 Yuji deeply knows how heavy and cruel the fate of the astral body is to be bound by birth. Those mournful and crying sounds almost drove her into madness at the very beginning. If the evolution of Tianyuan will not have a negative impact, well, there's no reason why an innocent girl should be burdened with everything. There have been too many such tragedies in the millennia. Compared with the ongoing tragedy of the astral body, breaking the cycle of assimilation between Tian Yuan and the astral body will make the once assimilated astral body girls meaningless. But this is the common aspiration of those astral body girls who are assimilated by Tian Yuan. At the same time, it was also what Jujuyuki expected. But, she couldn't do anything on her own. But now. 99 Yuki slightly sideways. Looking at Lu Chen's back, bathed in the setting sun, who was followed by Riko Amane. The tragedy of reincarnation of Tianyuan assimilating astral plasma seems to be finally broken. Separated from 99 Yuki, everyone came to the foot of Yanshan Mountain where Jujutsu High School is located. In front of you, you can see huge mahogany doors. It is composed of a pair of thick wooden columns, beams on the columns and squares under the beams. Some of the ends of the beams are protruded outwards, and some are inserted into the column body. Such a torii door, looking up from the foot of the mountain, extends to the end of the line of sight. Is this the way to the high school? In the mythology of Neon, the torii is considered to be used to distinguish the realm of the gods from the mundane world inhabited by humans. Its implication is the entrance to the realm of the gods. Is this a demonstration of the detachment of the Jujutsu High School? However, this has nothing to do with Lu Chen. What caught Lu Chen's attention was when he passed through the last torii gate and stepped onto the slow platform, he felt a layer of enchantment that skipped from his body. Lu Jun. Before he had time to explain to Lu Chen, he opened his mouth when he saw Lu Chen stepping into Iori Utahime's high school barrier. What? Lu Chen looked at the latter. No. It's nothing. I forgot that Lu Jun has a completely magic-free physique, and Lu Jun cannot be detected by the enchantment. Because of the message from Yaga Masamichi originating from Tianyuan, Iori Utahime and Mei Mei are still based on the direction of Lu Chen's actions. Lu Chen just wanted to meet Tian Yuan this time, and it was normal for them to enter the Jujutsu High School, so they wouldn't say much. However, there is a barrier around the Jujutsu High School. If there is no spell power entered in the barrier of the high school, it will cause a reaction. Even the tiny spell power of ordinary people is no exception. However, Lu Chen has a completely spell-free physique. For Gaozuan's enchantment, it is like a transparent person, who can enter and exit easily and silently, and the enchantment will not sound any alarm. Iori Utahime was slightly taken aback. Thinking about it this way, wouldn't the Jujutsu High School be free for Lu Chen to come and go without arousing anyone's notice? I don't know what Iori Utahime was thinking, but Lu Chen looked at the barrier invisible to the naked eye with great interest. His Sharingan opened when he sensed the enchantment. Compared with the cursed spirit enchantment of the second-level cursed spirit in the mansion, the method and composition of this enchantment are more mysterious. As for the effect, it is different from trapping and time difference. Instead, it serves to monitor the ingress and egress of spell power and alerts. In addition, it also has the effect of inhibiting the birth of cursed spirit. Only, Lu Chen's gaze was deep, and from this layer of enchantment, he saw more things extending from behind. That is the root of this high-level enchantment, the enchantment from a palace called Xing Xing Palace, under the high-level college. There is the source of the enchantment in front of you at this moment. It can also be said to be an important center. Presumably that is where Tian Yuan is. After the entry of Iori Utahime and Mei Mei, both high school students have registered mana. When Kuroi Misato and Tenuchi Riko came into contact with the enchantment, there was only a layer of ripples, and then subsided. One of the two is the guardian of the Heijing family's astral body, and the other is the astral body needed for Tianyuan's assimilation. Naturally, the alarm will not sound. Are there no other Jujutsu masters? Riko Amauchi looked curiously at the surrounding scenery in the building in front of her. In this period, there are more cursed spirits that need to be dealt with, and sorcerers are getting busy. Furthermore, this barrier was set by Master Tian Yuan. It is impossible for someone to enter the high school barrier without making a sound. Having said that, a slight embarrassment appeared on Iori Utahime's pretty face. Because she remembered that there was such an existence around her that was outside the paradigm she mentioned. Let's go, then. Mei Mei said. The curiosity and freshness on Riko's face dimmed a lot. Iori Utahime, who noticed this scene, quietly passed his gaze past Lu Chen, who seemed not to notice the change in the girl's mood. Pursing his lips, Iori Utahime didn't say anything. Under the guidance of Iori Utahime, several people passed through winding roads and gates, and finally came to a gate. Before entering the Xing Xing Palace, there are more than 1,000 doors. Only one is correct, and the others will be lost in the enchantment after entering. Therefore, there will be no guards here. Under Tian Yuan's instruction, several people didn't find any mistakes and came directly to the correct door. After opening it, it revealed the intertwined trees behind it. Oh? When passing by a house in the woods, Lu Chen raised his eyebrows, as if he found something interesting. This place, remember that it should be the taboo library where Jujutsu placed cursed tool in those cursed objects? Sukuna's fingers also have the 9 phases of the cursed embryo. Lu Chen could see the complicated sealing techniques above the room. It is also possible to see the traces of the cursed tools that are sealed in the house and the cursed objects that are in a sealed state, which are so weak that they are almost undetectable. However, the number of Sukuna's fingers has not reached the number when he was invaded by a real person in the anime, and the 9-phase diagram of the cursed fetus is not complete. These are not in a hurry to take them away now. Anyway, he can't run away here, so it's better to let Gao Zhuan help him find a few more. Lu Chen is not very interested in the Sukuna with a few fingers in the scattered 9-phase diagram of the cursed fetus that is not the first 3. It's better to go to see Tian Yuan first, and after dealing with the matter here, go to the cursed spirit that Juju Yuki told about. Super hypothetical cursed spirit, Shuten Doji. Sweeping his gaze over the taboo, Lu Chen continued to walk forward. Take an elevator down to the square below. Stepping out of the elevator, Misato Kuroi stopped in her tracks facing the long corridor ahead. Miss Riko Amauchi, who was following behind Iori Utahime, turned to look at Misato Kuroi. After a moment of silence, Kuroi Misato folded her hands in front of her body and bowed slightly. I'll send it here. Master Riko, please. With tears in her eyes, Misato Kuroi's voice was choked with sobs. Before she could finish the second half of her sentence, Riko Tenuchi rushed over and hugged her tightly. Riko Tenai buried her head on the shoulder of her only relative who had taken care of her since she was a child. Originally, I wanted not to cry in front of Heijing, so as not to make Heijing worry. But at this moment, the tears in his eyes still burst down uncontrollably. Heijing, I like you the most. The girl hugged Kuroi Misato tightly, as if she had exhausted all her strength in the first half of her life. Her choked voice contained deep reluctance and feelings that she wanted to confide but couldn't finish. It has always been, and always will be. Hearing the girl's words, Kuroi Misato burst into tears. She bit her lip hard and hugged the girl tightly. Thousands of words eventually turned into the same heart and emotion between each other. Me too. I like Missy the most too. At this moment, the two women choked and hugged each other tightly, as if they wanted to release all the feelings that they would never see each other again at this moment. Iori Utahime looked at the picture of Kuroi Misato and Tenuchi Riko embracing each other, pursed his lips, and silently glanced at Lu Chen who was looking at the Palace of the Stars in the corridor. When both of them gradually subsided, they set off again. Kuroi Misato stayed in the square in front of the elevator, and Tenuchi Riko followed a few people into the corridor. In the dimly lit corridor, the exit in front is bright. Crossing this short distance, but for the astral body girl at this moment, it seems to have spanned the life of more than 10 years that she lived before. And today is the end of my life journey that has ended before it even started. Passing through the corridor, what appeared in front of everyone was a wide field made up of row upon row of houses. And at the bottom of the center of the field, a giant tree with intertwined roots stretched out into the sky. Majestic, the spirit that needs people's admiration is coming. And on the giant tree, there are thick white knots wrapped around it, adding to it the mysterious and sacred meaning of religious prayer and sacrifice. Looking up at the quaint towering giant tree in front of her, Riko Amauchi murmured. Right here, yes, Riko. Iori Utahime said to the slender Riko Tenuchi next to him. Here, under Lord Tian Yuan's knees, is the foundation of the main barrier in the country, the main hall of the Xing Xing Palace. After going down the stairs, go through the door and walk to the root of the big tree. There, Master Tian Yuan will connect you to a special barrier that can only be entered by invitation. While listening to Iori Utahime's narration, Riko's eyes became a little dim, and her expression was full of depression. Then, Riko, we'll wait for you here. Saying so, Iori Utahime quietly glanced at Lu Chen again. Sensing the latter's gaze, Lu Chen raised his eyebrows but said nothing, but looked down at the direction of the giant tree's roots. Riko Amauchi didn't catch the hidden meaning in Iori Utahime's words. She rearranged her mood, showing a smile that was quite forced for a young girl at this time. Thank you very much Sister and Sister Mei Mei. During the last period, I am very happy. Tenai Riko's eyes were a little hot, and her slender hands clenched the corners of her skirt. And Master Lu Chen, you don't need to tell me that kind of thing. The girl's words were interrupted directly by Lu Chen waving his hand in confusion. After that, instead of taking the stairs, he jumped directly from the platform. The enchantment below does have some tricks, and it can also be said that Tian Yuan's understanding of enchantment is indeed something. At the very least, it is impossible to decipher it in a short period of time only by observing it from a long distance from above. Only after close analysis can one fully understand this layer of enchantment. Well, seeing this, Tianai Riko felt even more depressed. Saying goodbye to Iori Utahime and Mei Mei again, I went down the stairs. Iori Utahime and Mei Mei stayed on the platform. Looking at the delicate and lonely figure of the girl walking down the stairs slowly, the more emotional Iori Utahime let out a long breath. Huh, Miss Ming. What's wrong? Is this really correct? Yes or no, don't you already have the answer in your heart? Mei Mei looked from Lu Chen, who had already reached the bottom, to Iori Utahime who was beside him, put one hand on his waist, and said with a smile. Besides, we have all seen Lu Jun's true strength. What he wants to do is not something we can stop. In fact, Mei Mei doesn't dislike Riko Imani who gets along very well these days, on the contrary, she has a good impression of her. If Amuchi Riko can get a chance to get rid of her fate from Lu Chen, and the Jujutsu world doesn't need to face the risk that comes with the evolution of Master Tengen. Well, this is naturally what Mei Mei prefers. Yes. Iori Utahime was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. She had considered the wishes of the astral body at the beginning, but after seeing the touching picture just now and the bits and pieces of the previous play together, she became more shaken in her idea of Riko Imana being assimilated. But thinking of this mission, it is to escort the noble and significant Master Tianyuan in the Jujutsu world, and assimilate the astral body needed. Even if you don't want to, you have to complete it. The astral body has also been brought to the main hall of the Xingxing Palace, and the task can be said to be completed. After that, it doesn't matter whether Tien Yuan assimilates smoothly or not, or what choice Lu Chen makes. As Mei Mei said, those things are no longer something they can participate in or control. Perhaps Master Tien Yuan has already expected something. After all, we temporarily replaced us to take over the task, and gave Lu Jun full authority over the direction of action. Mei Mei looked again at Riko Tenuchi who was walking on the stairs, and then at Lu Chen who was standing at the bottom root of the giant tree. In any case, for now, we just need to wait for the results. Below the giant tree. Looking at the giant tree roots wrapped by an invisible barrier in front of him, Lu Chen raised his mouth slightly, and stretched out his hand to touch the barrier in front of him. Interesting stuff. Just before Lu Chen was about to come into contact with that barrier, a blank door appeared in the space in front of Lu Chen. Don't want me to continue exploring? Is it because this is the enchantment center, or? Lu Chen raised his eyebrows slightly. Facing the open portal emitting a lot of white light, he didn't enter right away. Instead, continue to unscrupulously use Sharingan to gain insight. He will not change what he wants to do because of other people's thoughts. The will of the strong will not be shaken by the external environment. What's more, this time I came here, apart from finding Tien Yuan to settle accounts, preventing the other party's assimilation is basically the same as becoming an enemy with the other party. Lu Chen doesn't even care about the latter's thoughts and feelings. Is it a fixed barrier? Then, the door just opened. Lu Chen still analyzed the enchantment in his own way. From the trajectory of the enchantment, he has already judged that this enchantment seems to have some basic point as a support. Even if the person who set up this enchantment dies, as long as the base point is still there, it will not have any impact on this central enchantment. And it is not an exaggeration to say that this enchantment is the center. The enchantment extending from this central enchantment is not only the layer surrounding the Jujutsu High School, but also a larger one, covering a rather large area. Even from this central barrier, Lu Chen also noticed that besides this, there are 3 other similar central barriers in the entire Neon. The huge barrier extending from here and the other 3 places almost covered most of the Neon area. As for the specific locations of the other 3 places, Lu Chen couldn't know from the barrier in front of him. Then, by observing the structure, technique and operation of the enchantment power, I deepened my understanding and cognition of the enchantment technique in this world. Keep imprinting this knowledge in your mind. Lu Chen has reached the level of a master who is proficient in enchantment in a short period of time from a person who only knows little about enchantment. Satisfied, Lu Chen looked comfortable and joyful. At this time, Riko Tenuchi also came to him. Thus, Lu Chen stepped into the door opened by Tianyuan. Master Lu Chen. Well, let's go. When Riko Teni came to him, Lu Chen nodded slightly, feeling very good because of what he had gained from the central enchantment. He stepped into the gate first, followed by the girl. When the 2 of them disappeared in the door one after another, the door also closed, and the picture of the ancient and thick tree roots was restored. Slap. The scene inside the door is completely different from the outside. Liu Chen and Riko Tenuchi who came here are both in a simple tatami-style room. In front of the small table, stood an old woman with an old face, who seemed to be dying. It was the Tianyuan that Liu Chen saw after extending out through Tiane Lizzie's consciousness. We meet again, a person who has transcended reincarnation. Tian Yuan looked at Liu Chen who was standing in front of Tiane Lizzie. To be precise, this is the first meeting in the real sense. Hearing the former address himself, Liu Chen raised his eyebrows. Indeed. Tian Yuan agreed, and then looked at Riko Tenuchi behind Liu Chen, showing a kind smile. Riko Amane, it's our first time meeting. Master Tian Yuan, hello. Facing this being who has a high status in the entire Jujutsu world and is almost deified, Riko Amauchi is obviously very nervous and apprehensive. Subconsciously, she moved a little behind Liu Chen, and her little hands tightly clenched the hem of the skirt. Among them, there may be some reasons why he will be assimilated by Lord Tian Yuan in the future. Don't be so nervous, just relax. Tian Yuan said to the girl in a kind voice. Afterwards, Liu Chen and Riko Tenuchi were introduced to a small tatami table and sat down. Liu Chen's posture was casual, while Riko Tenuchi sat beside Liu Chen in a somewhat reserved manner. The distance is a bit close, it seems that only by being so close to Liu Chen can he feel at ease. Tian Yuan sat opposite Liu Chen, it's really old. Liu Chen tapped the table with his right finger, and stared at the old woman in front of him with a pair of scarlet and ominous Sharingan eyes. After all, although I am immortal, I am not immortal. That's why I need to use the assimilation of astral body to initialize my physical body and stop the evolution brought about by simple aging. Immortal body, it really makes me want to try it myself, whether it is really impossible to die no matter what. Liu Chen continued to knock on the table with great interest, which was very obvious in the quiet room. The atmosphere seems to have become a little dignified and depressing at this moment. But Liu Chen looked relaxed, resting his left elbow on the table, propping his face on the back of his hand, and looking at Tian Yuan with his head slightly sideways. The latter showed no sign of being on guard and preparing to do something. After a brief silence, Tian Yuan said, "Although even I can't read people's hearts, you probably didn't come here for this purpose. You know it through the barrier covering this country, right? Through the analysis of the central barrier of the main hall of the Xing Palace just now, and the other 3 central barriers that he had discovered, Liu Chen already knew what method Tian Yuan used to spy on him. It can be said that with this huge barrier, even if Tian Yuan stays here all the time, he can still see many things in the outside world." Indeed. Tian Yuan paused and nodded in response. "As for your long time peeping at me from hiding in the dark, let's not mention this for now. The main purpose of my coming here is to see your so-called evolution, a new existence that surpasses the limits of human beings." Hearing this, Tian Yuan's vicissitudes and deep eyes met Liu Chen's. Listening to the conversation between the two, Tenuchi Riko was a little confused. At this time, although she didn't know why Liu Chen came to see Tian Yuan, she didn't think of anything related to herself. Although, it is true that there are not many reasons for her. But as far as the result is concerned, there is an inseparable relationship with this astral body girl. Tian Yuan, who fell into silence, spoke again at this moment. In this Jujutsu world, there is a special causal cycle, Tianyuan, star plasma, 6 eyes. No matter what happens to 6 eyes and star plasma, these 2 elements will appear on the day I assimilate. Having said that, Tian Yuan paused for a moment, and seeing that Liu Chen didn't show any expression of thought, he continued. "But now, because of your appearance, this causal loop has begun to fall apart. Zenon, no, it should be called Voheshel now, because he has 0 magic power and he will not be bound by the cycle of karma. However, Fushir is only free from the constraints of the causal cycle, but it does not necessarily break the cycle. And you are directly above the cycle of fate. Your appearance means that all karma and fate will collapse." This is also what she confirmed after she temporarily replaced Gojo Satoru and Sha Yuja with Iori Utahime and Mei Mei. If it is normal, even if they didn't get together because of the escort mission, Gojo Satoru, who has 6 eyes, will definitely meet Riko Amane, who is astroplasma, in these few days. Finally came here together. But during the days when Tenny Riko and Liu Chen got along, they were on the track of action, which was completely staggered with Gojo Satoru who had other things. Until now, Riko Amuchi is here. Gojo Satoru also did not serve as the assimilated guard, returning to the high school and coming to the Shigong. And Fushir, who may have an impact on the causal chain, has no chance to interfere with this reincarnation because of Liu Chen's existence. All of this can be said to be due to the appearance of Liu Chen, making all causal loops meaningless. Here, Liu Chen also knew why Tian Yuan called him that. Only, Liu Chen looked at Tian Yuan with great interest. As a time traveler with a system in his body, he does not contain magic power, but at the same time he is exercising a power different from this world. What Tian Yuan said may cause an extremely shocking sensation in the ears of other people. But for Liu Chen, these are just to expand his knowledge, there is nothing else, let alone make him feel turbulent. So, what are you going to do next? Take away Riko Tenai from me, re-maintain your chain of karma, and successfully complete the assimilation? Having said so much, since you know my purpose, what are you going to do next? Continuing this chain of cause and effect, if the assimilation is completed through Riko Tenai, I will not sit idly by. Liu Chen raised his head slightly, obviously sitting at the same height, but looking down at Tian Yuan. The corner of his mouth raised a dangerous arc, and he looked into Tian Yuan's eyes, and the three-hooked jade in it was spinning rapidly. How about it? Try to snatch Riko Tenuchi away from me. The pupil power of unknown and curse made the air in the whole room thicker. The calm chakra ocean also began to turbulent in Liu Chen's body. As long as Tian Yuan shows signs of making a move, Liu Chen doesn't mind trying out the opponent's strength before the opponent evolves. Since it is an immortal body, it will not die after being touched casually a few times, right? It wasn't Tian Yuan who reacted first, but the astral girl sitting next to Liu Chen. The girl opened her eyes slightly, and looked at the side face of the figure beside her with a heavy sense of oppression in a daze. What did she hear? Master Liu Chen wants to protect her and prevent Master Tian Yuan from assimilating her. Just when the girl began to realize the content of the conversation between Liu Chen and Tian Yuan, her mind stirred waves. Tian Yuan shook his head slowly and gave the answer. Let it be. It seems that increasing age does not mean that strength will become stronger. Seeing that Tian Yuan had no intention of grabbing Tian Nei Zi by force, Liu Chen felt bored. While chakra calmed down, the pupil power in the rapidly spinning Sharingan quickly faded away. Tian Yuan was not annoyed or angry about these words with a touch of contempt, and said calmly. My strength has not been outstanding for thousands of years, and the only thing I am good at is enchantment. And, for me right now, it's just accepting reality. Liu Chen raised his eyebrows. If the assimilation fails, I will continue to evolve due to the influence of my own spells. After evolution, my self-awareness will extend beyond the body. No one can guarantee whether I will become the enemy of human beings after evolution. Although I have a method that may be able to maintain the lost rationality, the possibility of success is unknown. If there were no accidents, I would not take the risk. At the end of the day, it's just smooth. Regarding Tian Yuan's remarks, Liu Chen laughed. Knowing Tian Yuan's method of peeping in the dark, when fighting Fu Hieshi, he also sensed Tian Yuan's hidden sight. When he released Yasaka Guyu later, the latter's sight fluctuated violently and then disappeared. Is there fear? Tian Yuan. From the Nara period thousands of years ago to the present. Since she released the enchantment covering the whole country, the birth of cursed spirit on Neon's side has been suppressed to a certain extent, and it has made it easier for other practitioners of enchantment to get started and deepen their attainments. People in the entire Jujutsu world, regardless of their strength or status, have considerable respect for her. No one would speak to her in such a tone. The conversation between the two has not reached the ears of Riko Tenuchi, who is the center of the discussion. Because, after actually hearing Tianyuan's reply that he would not assimilate, Riko's brain has become blank. It's like being in a dream, unbelievable. So much so that, even after the conversation between Liu Chen and Tian Yuan ended, there was an extra glass in front of him. Riko Tenai picked it up and drank it in a daze. Can't remember how the tea tasted at all. Moreover, it was also overlooked that the cup of tea was actually poured for Liu Chen and her by the high-status Lord Tian Yuan himself. Time flies like a fleeting horse, like water, and like sand falling from fingertips, which is unpredictable. The sun dipped completely below the horizon. The fiery setting sun was replaced by the falling night, and the stars twinkled. A full moon hangs high above the starry night sky, and the soft and bright moonlight falls on the earth, covering the quiet Jujutsu high school below with a layer of silver light. A ray of moonlight, along the elevator passage, directly reflects into the square on the lowest floor of Jujutsu High School. Misato Kuroe looked at the moonlight that meant the assimilation was about to start, and clasped her hands tightly in front of her chest. Turning around and looking towards the direction of the Xingxing Palace in the corridor, there were tears of reluctance in his eyes, and a ray of bright red overflowed from his slightly trembling lips under his teeth. Miss. Inside the corridor, there is the main hall of the Xingxing Palace. The two women who also noticed the moonlight in the square cast their gazes under the giant tree in unison. The root of the tree that opened the door to allow Lu Chen and Riko Amane to enter, and then restored to its original appearance. It seems that it's time for Master Tianyuan to assimilate. Iori Utahime's slender hand unconsciously closed. I don't know if she is nervous because Tenai Riko will be assimilated, or because Lu Chen is about to prevent the assimilation of Tianyuan, so that after Tianyuan evolves into a new existence, beyond the limits of human beings, what will happen? Within the central enchantment of the Xingxing Palace. In the house, Tianyuan's body emerged with dots of white halo. The scene of the house was also under Tianyuan's control, switching to the blank space where he met Lu Chen's spirit. It was agreed in advance that if you dare to play tricks in front of me, you will be killed. No, this is insurance for future evolution. Facing the pair of scarlet eyes that contained shocking power, Tianyuan said. In Lu Chen's eyes, Tianyuan was indeed as honest as she said, and he didn't use any means to win Tiannei Lizzie by her side. Instead, they are constantly using enchantment techniques to construct enchantments one after another, and connecting these enchantments together. Afterwards, another compound barrier covering the entire enchantment of the Xingxing Palace was formed. This layer of compound enchantment doesn't have much complicated effect. There is only a single one, which can stabilize the fluctuating consciousness in rage or chaos, and force Tianyuan to maintain rationality. Moreover, the target of this enchantment is only Tianyuan himself, and he and Riko Amane will not be impressed. Lu Chen, who has greatly improved his knowledge of enchantment, also knows the reason why there are so many enchantments but only one effect. Throwing away many complicated features, and only maintaining an enchantment with one effect, can the maximum performance of the enchantment itself carry the characteristics be able to be exerted. It should be said that he has lived for 1,000 years. Although Tianyuan's own strength is not good, his attainments in enchantment are indeed far-reaching and extraordinary. Not long. The white halo of Tianyuan's body disappeared, and Tianyuan itself began to age rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye, and white light spots, like fireflies, began to float from Tianyuan's body surface into the air. With the passage of time, Tianyuan's whole body also fell into a silver light that made it hard to see what it looked like. With this as the center, a huge wind pressure was set off, and the entire space began to shake. In a forest far away from Jujutsu High School, behind him floated the divine phoenix wheel. Juju Yuki, who had just casually wiped out a wandering cursed spirit, raised his head suddenly. His eyes looked slightly dignified in the direction of Jujutsu Gaojan. Evolution, start. It appears that the evolution has begun. He looked at Tianyuan, who was already shrouded in silver light in front of him. These silver glows come from the influence of the spell called Immortal in Tianyuan's body. But Lu Chen can still clearly see the Tianyuan inside it with Sharingan, and the body of Tianyuan is aging rapidly at this moment. In a short time, the decay has reached the point where it cannot be added. In the dense silver light, white light spots like fireflies floated out of Tianyuan's body. The silver glow constructed through the undead technique flew into the air, cruising around irregularly. Among these dots of light, one can faintly see a smaller green and mysterious imprint representing vitality. Even Lu Chen couldn't see through it for a while, and could only feel the difficulty. Call, as the technique continues to lead Tianyuan's life to a higher level. Streams of air began to revolve around the body of Tianyuan wrapped in silver light, and became more and more turbulent. The light spots in the sky mixed with green mysterious imprints were drawn into the sky above the silver glow by the hurricane. And affected by the power of Mei Mei, they converged into an oval object that floated upright in midair like a spring silkworm turning into a cocoon. The white surface of the whole body exudes dense light, and the green lines on it are very light, but they are more complicated and mysterious than before. The Tianyuan wrapped in the silver light is in a straight line with the white cocoon above. Then, the mysterious pattern on the surface of the white cocoon flickered like a heartbeat, and Tianyuan in the silver light below completely closed his eyes like dead wood. While the vitality gradually disappeared, the silver glow wrapped outside turned into strands of silk threads. Like a tributary of a stream, it swims backwards and merges into the white cocoon above. Is this the evolution triggered by the immortality technique? The corner of Lu Chen's mouth raised slightly, and Sharingan was activated to the extreme at this moment, gaining insight into Tianyuan's evolution process at the moment with the fastest speed. Although the speed was extremely slow, Lu Chen could tell. If he suffers a one-hit kill attack, he will not die, but the ability and mystery revealed from the evolution process triggered by the spell at this moment. Lu Chen was sure. This old antique that has lived for thousands of years, at least in terms of longevity, will indeed not die of old age due to the problem of human longevity. And, more than that, Lu Chen also saw something more. The operating principle of this spell, called immortal, is actually to absorb the mantra floating in the natural world and transform it into the vitality that is supplied to the owner of the spell. Thus, it is guaranteed that the owner of the technique will not die of old age, but the body will age with time. As for why Tianyuan needs to assimilate the astral body to refresh the information of the physical body and avoid evolution, it is also because of the excessive transformation. With the accumulation of the physical body of the master of the technique, the physical body will not be able to bear it. Here, the nature of the technique of immortal forced Tianyuan's own consciousness to extend beyond the body. Eliminate physical interference. The spells contact the natural environment in a more direct way, so that the power transformed by the spells can directly act on Tianyuan's own will without the restraint of the body. Then use Tianyuan to achieve the real, eternal life. Interesting. Many spells in the Jujutsu world are not very powerful, but the nature of the spell itself is quite interesting. Of course, that being said, if you only talk about toxicity but not dosage, then you are just playing hooligans. Just when Lu Chen used Sharingan to gain insight into the essence and mystery of the immortality spell, the evolution process did not slow down, and continued without stopping. Plop. Plop. As the vitality of Tianyuan's physical body continued to disappear, the silver light around him also became thinner and thinner. The white cocoon on the top seems to be pregnant with a brand new life form. The green lines on the body surface became deeper and more solid as strands of silver threads flowed in. The rhythmic light flickered in the lines at a slow speed, and the frequency began to increase continuously, as if the heart was beating more and more powerfully. The principle of how the immortal technique catalyzes the evolution of Tianyuan is known. However, the transformation operation and many matters related to immortality cannot be analyzed in a short time at all. Take the current Lu Chen as an example. Even if he was given another 10 years to stare at the spell insight day and night, he would not be able to gain insight into the essence of immortality. Unless the 100% inheritance template is achieved, it may be possible to reduce a large amount of homework to a very small level. But now, the time for the technique to be revealed is extremely limited. At least for now, Lu Chen does not intend to spend a conservative estimate of at least 10 years to observe and analyze this spell. For him who has a system, achieving immortality is just the only way to reach the apex of all worlds. In this Jujutsu world, his strength is already at its peak. There is no need to be in a hurry. Of course, Lu Chen, who has seen the immortality technique, has no intention of letting Tianyuan go. Between the minds so turning, the evolution of Tianyuan is also gradually approaching completeness. Originally, Tianyuan's body turned into a cloud of dust after the silver light all over his body was completely absorbed by the white cocoon above, and flew to nowhere. And the white cocoon in the sky, accompanied by the flickering green lines, made a heartbeat that caused ripples in this blank space. A strong hurricane rose up. Evolution is complete. The white cocoons in the air were reflected in Lu Chen's eyes. Crack. A crack appeared on the white cocoon, and then slowly spread to the whole of the white cocoon. A palm-sized fragment fell off from the upper part of the cocoon, revealing a human eye. The eyes are filled with indifference like rubies. His eyes turned slightly, and he suddenly turned his gaze to Lu Chen below. Behind the white cocoon, a phantom of a giant tree suddenly appeared, and on the giant tree there was a ferocious centipede that would be entrenched on the trunk of the giant tree. Ah! Seeing this, Lu Chen, who was looking at that eye, raised an arc of interest at the corner of his mouth. At the same time when the branch extended from the giant tree turned into a sharp spear and shot at him. Lu Chen's Sharingan is also spinning rapidly, turning into a kaleidoscope pattern connected end to end. A flash of blue light flashed, and immediately, several spears submerged the figures of Lu Chen and Riko Teni behind him. Boom. Boom. The hurricane and shock aftermath caused by the huge collision hit the barrier of the blank space. Liu Chen and Riko Amauchi, who were suddenly attacked extremely fiercely, were wrapped in blue ribs. Suzunohu initial stage. At this time, Riko Tenuchi, who was suddenly awakened by the ear-shattering sound after being attacked, finally recovered from the dreamlike confusion. She also finally realized that the conversation she had heard earlier was not a hallucination. Because of Liu Chen's existence, she really got rid of the fate of being assimilated. The white cocoon in the sky is also silently telling that this is the result after Tian Yuan did not assimilate her and chose to evolve. Liu Chen, who didn't pay attention to the mood of the girl behind him, removed Susanoo's rib skeleton and looked at the evolved Tianyuan in the air in a white cocoon. After attacking once, Tian Yuan did not attack again. Liu Chen raised his eyebrows if he felt something. Is it the enchantment that Tian Yuan prepared earlier? The life in the white cocoon is just an eye exposed from the white cocoon, and it has not really broke out of the cocoon and become a butterfly from the white cocoon. Only by completely breaking away from this layer of white cocoon will it herald the complete end of evolution. At this time, a layer of light shield appeared out of thin air above the empty space, covering the white cocoon and the life after the evolution of Tianyuan. The life forms inside were also stunned, but their eyes were fixed on Liu Chen. Liu Chen sensed the abnormality on the opponent. The girl Tianyuan, who was supposed to be fixed and restored to her original rationality, had an accident at this time. I saw the silver-haired girl in the white cocoon, with a strong and bright silver light glowing from her body. The white cocoon, which was already covered with spiderweb-like cracks, seemed to be unable to withstand its force, and suddenly shattered like glass. The whole picture of the girl was revealed. The delicate body is wearing a large pale pink kimono, and the long silver hair is slightly loose and lazy around the waist. Under the kimono, the white skin like suet jade is exposed, which can be broken by blowing. The facial features are exquisite, as if God made beauty. That pair of indifferent red eyes looked down at Liu Chen below, like an existence detached from the world. The barrier that wanted to fix Tian Yuan's lost rationality was blocked by the silver glow on the girl's body. Unable to touch the girl's body and play its role, the girl, that is, completed the evolution, turned into a Tianyuan who completely surpassed human beings and evolved to a higher dimension. With a wave of her slender hand at her side, the barrier that had been set up earlier was thrown out. That barrier continued to fly towards the girl Tian Yuan, but was suppressed by an inexplicable force and froze there. From the beginning to the end, the girl Tian Yuan's gaze never left Liu Chen's body, looking elsewhere. "You are very dangerous." An ethereal and indifferent voice came from the pink lips that opened and closed. The giant tree wrapped around the giant centipede behind it once again shot out a long and sharp branch mixed with strong mantra. The impenetrable attacks that turned into raindrops swept down Liu Chen at the same time. It seems that Tian Yuan's method has failed. But it's also just right. Let me see the so-called higher dimensional life. What kind of strength is it? Facing another attack from above, the number was vastly different. It would not be an exaggeration to say that there were hundreds of thousands of mana wood thorns overwhelming. The corners of Liu Chen's mouth raised slightly. In an instant, all the handprints that were about to release ninjutsu formed in the hands. Fire escape Haoyanhua. 3 meteorite-like fireballs collided with hundreds of wooden thorns falling like a storm from top to bottom. Boom boom boom. The sound of continuous explosions can be heard endlessly. The smoke and dust from the wooden thorns blocked Liu Chen and the girl Tian Yuan. A hurricane violently blew away the thick smoke, and the girl Tian Yuan withdrew her outstretched hand. I don't like looking up at people. Liu Chen looked at the blank direction ahead, and did not look up at the girl Tian Yuan floating in the air. There was a hint of danger in the voice. The moment the voice fell, the girl Tian Yuan, who seemed to feel the danger, was just about to launch an attack, but found that Liu Chen below had disappeared. The girl Tian Yuan was slightly stunned. Immediately, Liu Chen, who disappeared from sight in a blink of an eye, had already arrived in front of her. Facing the beautiful Tian Yuan at the moment, Liu Chen didn't show any sympathy for her. He spun around in the air and kicked the girl Tian Yuan heavily in the abdomen. Boom. The latter slammed heavily on the ground in the empty space like a fired shell. And it rolled on the ground several times before it stopped. It can be seen how powerful Liu Chen's kick is. Liu Chen, who fell from midair, just landed in front of the girl Tian Yuan, who was lying on the ground and was supporting her body. Looking down at the latter from a high position. This is the height you should have. The girl Tian Yuan who heard these words raised her head to look up at Lu Chen, but there was no anger or resentment in her expression. What is contained in the eyes is only extremely strong vigilance and killing intent. The centipede entangled the phantom of the giant tree, and two branches quickly extended out, hitting Lu Chen heavily from above. Little tricks. Lu Chen didn't dodge, nor did he have any intention of using ninjutsu to counter him. Standing there calmly and naturally, a pair of straight-hook jade kaleidoscope sharing eyes connected end to end, exuding an ominous pupil power so strong that no one can ignore it. The Susanoo armor that had disappeared originally reappeared around Lu Chen's body at the moment the attack was about to fall on Lu Chen's body, completely blocking the two attacks. Susanoo's ribs, burning with chakra flames, are like a moat separating Lu Chen from the outside world. No attack can break through its absolute defense and hurt Lu Chen in the center. The girl Tian Yuan took advantage of the gap in the attack and quickly got up to distance herself from Lu Chen. Looking ahead at the young girl Tian Yuan who did not rise into the sky again and manipulated the phantom to attack again without saying a word, a flash of understanding flashed in Lu Chen's eyes. So that's how it is. Now you don't have individual consciousness. I see. Looking at the girl Tian Yuan in front of him, Lu Chen's eyes were clear. The opponent's performance at this time is like a new life that has just been born. Although the individual lacks consciousness, facing the existence of danger that can threaten his life, he is driven by instinct to eliminate the stress response of the dangerous factor. And Tian Yuan set up an enchantment to maintain rationality in advance. Originally, after evolution, rationality was refixed by taking advantage of the blank period when individual consciousness was lacking and defenseless. However, because he felt a strong sense of crisis from him, the girl Tian Yun, who had no individual consciousness after evolution, directly rejected the barrier that Tian Yuan set up in advance, and instinctively began to attack him continuously. Of course, even though he saw this, Lu Chen just didn't care. The only thing that disappointed Lu Chen was that the girl in front of him, Tian Yuan, didn't have the fighting consciousness after living for 1,000 years. He was just following his instinct, drawing mana power from the outside world, and constantly using mana power to directly attack him. Even the enchantment technique that Tian Yuan was originally proficient in, he didn't know how to use it. Thus, it's just a mana creature with huge mana power that can be used, and has a very high tolerance for mana power, but has no skills at all. Bang bang bang. Speaking of great power without the slightest skill. Facing the oncoming branch wrapped in strong mantra, Lu Chen completely ignored it. Even though the latter's attacks kept falling on Susanoo's ribs outside him, the opponent's current attacks couldn't even touch him. And Lu Chen, who thought of something, looked at the young girl Tian Yuan and the huge phantom behind him with a little interest. It's very similar to a tailed beast. At this time, he seemed to feel that his level of attack could not threaten Lu Chen at all. The girl Tian Yuan suddenly stretched out her hands in the direction of Lu Chen and spread her 5 fingers. Hiss. The body wrapped around the giant tree was fully stretched out, and the phantom centipede, which might be even bigger than the giant tree, let out a sharp hiss. The huge air pressure directly hit Lu Chen's Susanoo's ribs. Of course, it is impossible to have any influence on Lu Chen. Naturally, the girl Tian Yuan wasn't bluffing, and she didn't have that consciousness at all. After a roar, the silhouette was hideous and terrifying, with sharp barbs all over the body, and the phantom centipede full of evil and negative curses disappeared on the giant tree strangely. Lu Chen's kaleidoscope Sharingan is offset to the right. I saw that the huge centipede phantom had come to his right. Being close at hand, the centipede phantom opened its mouth full of fangs, and bit the blue Susanoo's ribs. Lu Chen, who was wrapped in Susanoo's armor, flew into the air with a huge force. Afterwards, the giant centipede phantom bit Lu Chen through Susan Riku, and continued to rampage in the empty space. The entire space vibrated violently under this unparalleled force, as if it was about to be broken due to overwhelm. Boom. With the centipede phantom biting Lu Chen and hitting the ground for the last time, huge wind pressure swept in all directions. The girl Tian Yuan, who was shielding her face with her arm, looked in the direction of the centipede phantom after the wind pressure dissipated. Her expression froze immediately. I see. Under these continuous attacks, Lu Chen, who was in the mouth of the ferocious centipede, was still unscathed. Even that layer of Susan's ribs did not show any signs of breaking. If it's only this level, it's not even as good as that guy. Lu Chen, shrouded in Susan, looked at the young girl Tian Yuan with a touch of disappointment in his gaze. Although this level of power is indeed good, there is still a certain gap compared to Fushir before coming here. Because the so-called beyond human, higher dimension, and new life that Tianyuan will achieve after evolution seem to make people feel incomprehensible titles. Therefore, Lu Chen has very high expectations for the evolved Tianyuan. And seeing the evolved Tianyuan, the powerful spell power that far surpassed the 99 yogis revealed when he broke the cocoon, Lu Chen's interest in the girl Tianyuan can be said to be further improved. But at the level shown now, Lu Chen couldn't help wondering if he had misjudged himself. Is it just for show? There is a strong bite force on the top, and the centipede phantom is full of magic power in the teeth. It may be quite a threat in the eyes of other Jujutsu divisions, but to Lu Chen, it is not worth mentioning. With the explosion of chakra and pupil power, a skeletal arm grew out of the ribs of Susanoo, which was only used for defense. With one punch, the centipede phantom was sent flying. It just happened to hit the phantom of the giant tree, and the phantom of the giant tree shook a few times before returning to stability. Lu Chen, who was standing there, cast his eyes sideways on the young girl Tianyuan. If that's all, you can disappear. The faint sound was accompanied by the heavy chakra gushing out from the body. It announced that Lu Chen had lost great interest in the girl Tianyuan, and was ready to quickly resolve this boring battle. The girl Tianyuan's body trembled, and her pupils shrank suddenly. The horrifying sense of death crisis that was so strong that it was almost suffocating made the girl Tianyuan instinctively use her strongest power so far. Her eyes are wide open. The magic power intertwined with silver and green lifted her up and floated to the same height as the phantom of the giant tree. Skeleton. Hiss, accompanied by the girl Tianyuan, an ethereal voice filled the entire blank space. The centipede phantom that fell to the ground raised its head and let out a scream, flying in front of the girl Tianyuan. Then, centered on the girl Tianyuan and the phantom of the giant tree, after circling at extreme speed for several laps, it landed on the giant tree again, and resumed its original staggering and entangled posture. Melt. The young girl Tianyuan opened her arms, her smooth silver hair fluttering slightly, and the kimono on her delicate body was windless and automatic. Silver-colored power emerged from its body surface, and the whole person began to gradually become illusory. Like the phantom behind her, the girl Tianyuan slowly floated backward into the phantom of the centipede wrapped around the giant tree. Boom! The huge mantra, which is as vast as the vast ocean, exploded instantly like a volcanic eruption. The moment when the girl Tianyuan melted into the phantom shadow of the giant tree wrapped around the centipede, the vast ocean-like spell power exploded from it like a volcanic eruption. That huge phantom seemed to have a real life at that moment, possessing real power from an illusory state. The giant tree became an entity full of rich greenery and vitality. And the centipede wrapped around it is also no longer a phantom. The whole body with sharp edges and corners, full of ferocious thorns, is filled with solid black and purple color, turning into a real existence. Hiss. The huge branches and leaves on the cursed tree trembled. The entangled skeletal scorpion raised its head to the sky and let out a deafening neigh. The green energy full of vitality collided with the black and purple magic power symbolizing destruction, turning into a shock wave of pure magic power, impacting towards Lu Chen. This attack caused Lu Chen's eyes to reveal a look of surprise, which was immediately replaced by deep interest. Roar. Susanoo, who was originally only in the initial stage, was instantly promoted to the first order form. With the upper body of Susanoo, his face was like a Shura, and he let out a wild and bloodthirsty roar like a wild beast. The right arm, which was blue and could see the skeleton structure in it, suddenly clenched its fist, and smashed it on the energy with pure force. Boom! In the strong explosion dust, Lu Chen, who activated the first order Susan, flew out of it. However, Lu Chen in midair did not lose his center, and landed steadily in front of Riko Tenni. That's more or less what it looks like. Lu Chen looked at the cursed tree skeletal in the distance, which had turned into a complete entity, and showed a happy smile. Although Susan's defense is still strong, Lu Chen wrapped in Susan is also not injured. However, the power contained in this blow can also be seen. It should be noted that when facing Susanoo, Fushir, who had a public technique, was wrestling, but he was blasted out after less than a second. Stay inside and don't go anywhere. Lu Chen walked forward slowly without looking back. Susanoo's right arm threw out a blue barrier, covering Tenuchi Riko below. The girl stretched out her hand and touched the semicircular barrier. It was as solid as if it would not be broken by any attack. However, Riko Tenai watched the figure walking towards the cursed tree skeleton, but seemed to feel the temperature from Lu Chen on the barrier, which should not have existed. Actually, if it was a stranger who had never met before, then whether Lu Chen would give the opponent a little protection during the battle depended on his mood. As for her first fan girl who came to the world, Lu Chen has always had a pretty good impression. It is also thanks to this fangirl that it provides a lot of padding for the tail panel among the tail beast panels. In this way, in this subsequent battle that might allow him to let go of his hands and feet a little, there is nothing wrong with providing the latter with a protection at will. Then, next, Lu Chen walked slowly towards the cursed tree skeletal in front of him, feeling the strong aura of the former, and the corner of his mouth raised an arc of excitement. This kind of aura is even stronger than the girl Tian Yuan when she broke the cocoon. This form may be the true manifestation of the power of Tianyuan, the individual consciousness integrated into the world after evolution. Just let me enjoy it. Ever since he came to the world to obtain this power, Lu Chen has never really fought heartily. Even the sorcerer killer, who blocked the way before, Fu Hiesher, who is the heaven and the tyrant, also couldn't do it. At most, it made him feel a lot of interest. Perhaps, the life in front of him that has evolved to a higher dimension can allow him to show his true strength. Hoo. It seemed that he was irritated by Lu Chen's voice, and it seemed to be a pure coincidence. The thick vines on the body of the Lui curse tree turned into black shadows, causing a sharp sound of piercing the air, enclosing Lu Chen from all directions and different angles, without giving Lu Chen the slightest retreat. Those thick and tough vines are filled with thick green vitality, which makes their power even higher, which cannot be ignored. That momentum seemed to destroy Lu Chen with one blow. However, this is simply not realistic. Facing such an unavoidable attack with no dead ends, Lu Chen himself had no intention of dodging. He folded his arms and looked calm. Susanoo's two arms are raised above his head, and each big arm is connected to two opposing forearms and palms. Paired with Susanoo's face, another Shira's face appears like a mirror behind his face. Susanoo is almost like a Shira with half body and two faces. While the arms are raised high, the two front arms of Susanoo cross each other, and the two rear arms have the same posture. The blue radiance of chakra, which contains the huge and turbulent chakra like the vast sea, is shining on the four arms. Then gathered in the palm of the hand, the four blue chakra lightsabers with slightly curved blades were held by Susanoo's four palms respectively. Call. The moment Susanoo grasped the hilt of the sword, a wave of air rippled around it. Accompanied by that, the four arms slashed in four directions around the body, and four huge blue sword glows erupted in response, directly crushing the impenetrable green vine of vitality. The ground of the blank space was affected by these four sword lights, and several cracks appeared from the long sword slashing. The attack was easily dispelled. The curse tree did not move, but the skeletal scorpion wrapped around its body opened its metal-like mouth. A circle of ferocious and bloodthirsty fangs is particularly obvious. What is even more noticeable is a black-purple energy ball that is continuously condensed from the mantra in its mouth. Evil curse gun explosion. Aware of this energy ball that bombarded him like a bomb, the extremely dense mana power fluctuated in it. The arc on the corner of Lu Chen's mouth became more intense, and his expression was filled with arrogance. Holding the Susanoo blade in both forearms, he slashed straight at the energy ball containing extremely dangerous mana density in a cross-slashing manner. Roar. Susanoo exerted his strength suddenly, and the contours of the muscles above his arms swelled up obviously. The incomparable strange power directly countered the spell energy bomb, and it hit the mouth of the scorpion that hadn't closed its mouth. The huge turbulent flow of mana swept the entire space with the strong pressure of the hurricane. The huge torrent of mana power directly submerged the mantra tree skeleton. Amidst the raging black-purple mana power, one can vaguely hear the painful and sharp neighing of the skeletal beetle. After a long time, the figure in it appeared. The vitality on the green curse tree faded a lot, and scars appeared on the body surface. The face of the skeletal scorpion was also blurred a lot, and several sharp and hideous joints on the upper half of the body were also broken into half. It was obvious that he suffered the blow from himself, which made the cursed tree skeleton quite uncomfortable. Tian Yuan, the girl who was hiding in the curse tree, closed her eyes at this moment, as if she had fallen into a deep sleep. Her body glowed with silver light. The spell power from the outside world seems to be affected by inexplicable gravity, and it is continuously absorbed into the cursed tree skeleton. The cursed tree swayed, and the skeleton swayed. The greenness recovered, and the damage on the tree body and the injuries of the skeletal scorpion all recovered rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. Oh. Reversal technique. Seeing this, Liu Chen raised his eyebrows. The Kaleidoscope Sharingan and the Sanguyu Sharingan can be said to be two-dimensional powerful pupil power, which gave him insight into the essence. No, since the whole body is made up of mana, it only needs to absorb mana to make up for the injury. It's getting more and more interesting. It was as if he could see clearly the movements of the young girl Tian Yuan who had merged into it through the skeleton of the curse tree. A look of excitement gradually appeared in Liu Chen's eyes. Since it has the characteristics and ability to recover quickly, then it's okay to go too far, right? I hope this emptiness enchantment will not collapse because of too much power. As I said before, I don't like looking up at people, so. Blue chakra roared like a river and ocean, broke through Liu Chen's body, turned into a hot blue flame, and filled the half-body of Susanoo that wrapped Liu Chen. Roar. Half-length ghost god Susan looked up to the sky and screamed, like a real double-faced Shira. His whole body exuded a terrifying, ominous and destructive force. The blue flame made the half-length Susanoo more dazzling. A majestic and vast force set off Liu Chen and the half-length Susanoo together. In the dazzling blue light, there is a level of chakra that is far below that of ordinary cage-level ninjas. With the extremely ominous and domineering eyes of Curse in the pair of Kaleidoscope Sharingans merged into it, Susanoo, who originally only had an upper body, grew a lower body from the middle Liu Chen as a boundary. Susanoo who third stage the third order Susan, who was so terrifying that the entire emptiness barrier was shrouded in a mountain-like oppression, was a full-body Shura ghost, and came to the battlefield at this moment. Boom. Susanoo in full body form took a step forward with 1 foot, and the entire ground of the emptiness enchantment seemed to tremble at this moment. Even the curse tree skeleton in the distance was oppressed by the aftermath of the third order Susan at this moment, and slid back tens of meters. The current height is just right. Liu Chen is in the head position of the huge body tens of meters high of the third order Susanoo. At this moment, Liu Chen folded his arms, looking down at the girl Tian Yuan who was hiding in the body of the cursed tree skeleton in front of him with his posture and expression. The height of the cursed tree skeleton was almost twice the height of the first order Susanoo. The core position where the girl Tian Yuan is located is the middle part of the curse tree, which is basically on the same level as the head of the first order Susan. And the third order Susanoo in the full body form, with the skyrocketing height, not only the height of itself surpassed the height of the cursed tree skeleton. Liu Chen at the head looked down on the ladder even more. Boom boom boom. Feeling this contemptuous and arrogant gaze, the cursed tree skeleton, controlled by the closed-eyed girl Tian Yuan, launched an attack again. The thick roots of the curse tree supported on the ground, with many roots, suddenly spread towards the surrounding area. The roots, which were not so hard and mature at first, quickly grew up and turned into the size of the branches of the curse tree under the continuous supplement of mantra power. This scene reminded Liu Chen of the arrival of the Wood Escape Tree World released by Qianshujujian in Naruto. It's just that, compared to the grand scale of the map-wide attack, the curse tree in front of him is still far behind. Faced with a large number of branches sweeping like waves, Susanoo in full body shape stomped his right foot on the ground, and a blue curved blade emerged from his right hand out of thin air. The shape is the same as the one used by the previous first order Susan. But what is being held in the hands of the giant Susan at this moment is sharper and slender, and it is full of pure violent destructiveness that is almost overflowing. Call. Susanoo's huge body deflected a little to the left, and the Susanoo blade in his right hand came to his left waist. Like a knife in its sheath. As Susanoo's body rotated to the right, the sharp edge of his right hand swung out suddenly. The sword that seemed to be able to cut through the mountains burst out with a fierce edge, turning into a huge crescent-shaped slash, and directly collided with the surging torrent of trees. The entire blank space called the Emptiness Enchantment began to be overwhelmed and turbulent, with cracks appearing around the two attacks as the center. And it is still slowly extending towards the surroundings. It seems that the entire space is in danger of being shattered under these two attacks at any time. A series of turbulent airwaves mixed with fierce aftermath spread to the entire space, not to mention ordinary Jujutsu masters. Even if they stay here at the first level, the aftermath alone will be smashed to pieces. As an ordinary physical fitness Riko, she stayed obediently in the protective barrier. Regardless of the energy impact just now or the aftermath at this moment, they can't break through and hurt the girl inside. As for the girl, she kept watching with inexplicable emotions in her eyes, just like the figure standing in the head of the real Asura ghost god Susanoo. Kacha kacha kacha. The slash of the third order Susanoo almost cut through the mountains, and collided with the attack released by the curse tree like a sea of trees. The entire emptiness enchantment began to tremble, and the space uttered an overwhelmed scream. A series of cracks appeared in the blank space, as if they would break apart at any moment. The third order Susanoo's slashing almost continuously destroyed a large area of mantra trees in a crushing manner. But after the girl Tianyuan continuously extracted supplies from the outside world to the curse tree, and the curse tree continued to release the sea of trees, it finally barely resisted the power of this knife. It is obvious that the other party preemptively strikes and attacks first. But facing the third order Susan, who showed his whole body at this moment, like a real Shira ghost descending, became the side of passive resistance. This is the strength of Lu Chen's chakra, which is as vast as the ocean. This is the tyrannical pupil power of the kaleidoscope Sharingan that symbolizes curse and the unknown. This is the true power of Susanoo, the power of God, representing pure destruction. Although my strength is not as good as that of Uchiha Madara's heyday, but this level of moves is far inferior to Senju Bashirama's arrival of the tree world. Lu Chen folded his arms, looked at the piled-up piles of broken branches and trees, and said calmly. Compared with the powerful power that can be called changing the map, the curse tree in front of it is simply far different from it. The gap is as big as a gap. However, for Chen at this moment, it should also be able to let him really have a good time. Come on, dance as hard as you can in front of me. Lu Chen opened his eyes slightly, his pupils narrowed slightly, and said loudly. Susanoo in the third order full body form rushed towards the cursed tree skeleton with heavy but not slow steps. Although the body size has become so large, it is not just a pure increase in strength. Its own explosiveness also makes the mobility not slow down because of the thickness and bulk of the body. Boom boom boom. Susanoo, who was tens of meters high, stomped heavily on the ground, trembling. Originally, due to the energy of the previous two attacks that violently collided together, the space with cracks had become a little weaker than the original intact emptiness enchantment. Under such strength, the cracks gradually expanded a little bit, and several new cracks also extended like glass before it was broken. Aware of the dangerous curse tree skeleton, the skeleton once again condensed an energy ball with a higher density of spell power than before. Shoot at the head of the oncoming third order Susan Lu Chen. Evil curse gun explosion. But this time, Susanoo didn't use the chakra blade anymore, but swung his right arm heavily, and sent the more powerful spell energy bomb flying out. It hit the rear, triggering a huge explosion of magic power, and the turbulent currents raged wildly. Boom. Against the backdrop of a huge explosion of spell power, Susanoo, who was controlled by Lu Chen with his arms folded, had come to the curse tree skeleton. A punch hit the curse tree. Under the terrifying force, as layers of airwaves spread, the curse tree and the skeletal tree on its body were blown away. It kept flying upside down, and finally stopped when it hit the barrier at the end of the entire space. This time, it also made the emptiness enchantment, which was already somewhat fragmented, worse again. At the position where it was hit, more cracks broke out, indicating that the emptiness barrier would not last long. Before the cursed tree skeletal fell to the ground, the third order Susan punched the field horizontally again. This time, the latter was not defenseless. The hard skeletal scorpion entangled on the curse tree, with its tough black and purple body, resisted the punch of the third rank Susan. Although it was not directly hit this time, but the domineering fist of the third order Susanna still sent the cursed tree skeleton flying out again. Flying a few hundred meters, he bumped into the center of the emptiness barrier again. The skeletal scorpion that fell on the ground could see the opponent's body, which could not even be hurt by shells, and a quite obvious fist mark was sunken. Hiss. 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 The skeletal scorpion made a painful sound, and the body wrapped around the curse tree was constantly swinging. The worm feet made of arthropods scraped against the body of the curse tree, coupled with the sound of stinging, between the armored worm's body and the worm's feet. It made people's hairs stand on end. If Juju Yuki, who left, saw such a scene and scale of battle, he would probably be in a cold sweat. In a battle of this scale, every attack has the power to directly kill her. It can be said that as long as one is not careful, his life will be lost. Even in the face of other super-level battles in the Jujutsu world today, it is impossible to reach such a point. No. Even if it is a special level, there is basically no possibility of surviving in this out-of-standard battle that has broken away from the level that ordinary people can intervene. The ending of death occupies almost all the probability. This level is not enough to watch, there are stronger tricks. It was the first time to show this kind of power. Lu Chen naturally wanted to have as much fun as possible. He said to the girl Tian Yuan, who was in the cursed tree skeleton hundreds of meters away. Although the girl Tian Yuan did not speak out, she responded with practical actions. Tian Yuan, the girl who existed in the curse tree, slowly opened her eyes, and a bright silver glow bloomed in her eyes, as magnificent and deep as the galaxy that filled the sky. A richer mantra was instantly poured into the body of the skeleton. The fist mark on the armor was quickly recovered, and the two blood-red eyes of the skeleton stared at the culprit who hurt it. Those bloodthirsty eyes wanted to tear Lu Chen in Susanoo into pieces and devour him. Hey, the eyes look good. Looking at this ferocious gaze like a bloodthirsty beast vowing to devour everything, Lu Chen's kaleidoscopic Sharingan eyes emitted an ominous power that would make many super-cursed spirits shudder. Lu Chen said with a provocative expression. Next moment, a series of black-purple electric currents comparable to super-level mana power jumped on the skeletal scorpion, and then they all rushed towards Susanoo's huge body. If you look closely, you can find it. Those flashes of lightning with destructive spell power are actually small skeletal scorpions that have the same shape as skeletal scorpions, but their size has shrunk countless times. On the way to attack Susanoo's whole body, he suddenly changed his direction in the air and gathered at lightning speed to form a mantra with the same size as the scorpion. Lu Chen still folded his arms. Lu Chen had anticipated the change in this attack, but he didn't react. Instead, he waited for the latter's follower, wanting to see what the other party wanted to do. Snapped. I saw that the huge body of the mantra skeletal with amazing power rotated, and directly entangled the dozens of meters high Susanoo in the same way as the mantra tree skeletal. Then, with the long arthropod legs and great strength, Susanoo was bound there. I see. Lu Chen didn't care about the squeezing force that could shake the mountains from the Susanoo, and the constant spell power attacking the Susanoo. Instead, he used the kaleidoscope Sharingan to gain insight into the skeletal scorpion above the curse tree, and the trajectory of the spell that continuously condenses the spell. Using this attack as a restraint, he couldn't dodge, and could only forcefully eat the next attack of the skeletal scorpion. This is the real function of the mantra skeletal entwined around Susanoo's body. In fact, it is indeed what Lu Chen observed. Perhaps it should be said that this kind of action cannot escape Lu Chen's eyes that can penetrate all the secrets of the world. Evil ghost strike with the accumulation of time. The magic ball full of evil and negativity in the mouth of the scorpion this time is far more powerful than all previous attacks. Originally, due to the battle between Lu Chen and the girl Tian Yuan, many broken emptiness barriers appeared. Its sturdiness has come down to a rather low level. Under such a magic powerball with devastating power, even if this attack has not exploded with real power, it is just ready to go. The fluctuation of its energy has already caused new cracks in the barrier of emptiness. However, neither Lu Chen nor the girl Tian Yuan cared about this. Riko Tenuchi, who was absolutely safe in the protective barrier, also set her sights on Lu Chen. The current situation seems to be that Lu Chen has been controlled and is about to be attacked by a blatantly surprising attack. However, the girl didn't have any worries, because she believes that Lu Chen is the strongest. No one can hurt Lu Chen. In the same way, I don't worry that this blank space will be completely broken at any time in the future, because Lu Chen's barrier is protecting her. Hiss. Amidst the sharp and creepy hissing sound, the mana ball turned into a dark torrent of mana power that suddenly blasted the bound Susanoo's huge body. The terrible torrent of mana is filled with huge and evil mana, growing bigger and bigger on the way. And along the way, the emptiness enchantment made a crisp sound like crackling, like glass breaking. Boom. The entire torrent reached Susanoo in the blink of an eye. The scale has also expanded to a shock coverage comparable to Susanoo's tens of meters tall body. In an instant, the mantra skeletal entwining and imprisoning Susanoo was completely destroyed by the evil mantra. Susanoo's tall and majestic blue body was completely engulfed by the dark black energy majesty and disappeared. At the same time, under the torrent of mantra that fully exploded the power of this blow, the emptiness enchantment that had already reached the critical point was also completely shattered. From the time of the assimilation of the full moon to the present, if Master Tianyuan assimilated Riko, it should have ended long ago. Looking at the time displayed on the phone, combined with the correct time that Tianyuan should assimilate, Iori Utahime came to a conclusion. Sure enough, it was Lu Jun who prevented Lord Tianyuan from assimilating. While quietly letting out a sigh of relief in my heart, I was also happy for Riko Amane. If it is not really forced, It is unacceptable for Iori Utahime to put the entire Jujutsu world on a young girl in her prime. Not to mention, during these days of getting along, I became more familiar with the girl who looked lively and cheerful, but actually showed a sad and reluctant expression from time to time. Given the choice, Iori Utahime doesn't want Riko Amauchi to be assimilated. It's just that thinking in the heart is one thing, but actually doing it is not so easy. Not to mention whether he can make Lord Tien Yuan give up the assimilation, if the assimilation fails. Defeat then became the end of Lord Tien Yuan's evolution. The good ending then naturally is nothing. But if it turns out to be a bad result, Master Tien Yuan becomes the enemy of mankind. Then, not only the structure of the Jujutsu world will change, but human society will also be affected. What's more, Iori Utahime doesn't think that with his current ability, he can make Master Tianyuan choose to give up the second path of assimilation. But now, time passed quietly, and no one came out from the enchantment below, undoubtedly saying silently that Master Tien Yuan did not assimilate the astral body. As expected of Lu Jun. No, if it is Lu Jun, this kind of thing may not be surprising. Mei Mei also looked away from the watch on her slender wrist. Even the Lord Tien Yuan, the unreasonably powerful Lu Chen in front of him, did not choose to assimilate Tien Ne Riko, who is an astral body, but chose a higher risk evolution. However, recalling the time from the first meeting to the present, they broke their cognition of each other again and again, like a bottomless black hole. Especially in the battle with Fushir not long ago, that kind of shocking and incomparable power that could wipe out even a small mountain in an instant. For Lu Chen, this in itself already represents an existence outside the standard. The result will develop like this. It seems that it is no longer too surprising. Even such an ending still feels reasonable. In this way, the next point is too. Mei Mei squinted her eyes slightly, and looked at a few roots of the giant tree in the main hall of the Xingxing Palace, where Lu Chen and Tien Ne Lizzie met Tien Yuan, the place where the enchantment opened the door. For so long, the enchantment has not changed. Lu Jun and Lizzie have not come out. I am afraid that the evolved Lord Tianyuan. Iori Utahime said with a serious expression after letting go of his concern for the astral girl. Although she didn't finish the rest of the sentence, Mei Mei already understood what the latter meant. The evolved Lord Tianyuan is probably fighting Lu Jun at this moment. Iori Utahime couldn't help feeling worried. Lu Chen's strength is certainly strong, even so strong that a single blow can instantly destroy a small mountain standing outside the forest. However, after the evolution of Lord Tianyuan, the individual consciousness will get rid of the shackles of the body, and to some extent it can be said to be integrated with the world. Here, the evolved Lord Tianyuan will transcend the limits of human beings and become a new life of a higher dimension. No one knows how detached and powerful such a Master Tianyuan will be. Even if he knows Lu Chen's strength and power, he will still inevitably worry about Lu Chen in the giant tree barrier. At this moment, the giant tree in the center of the Xingxing Palace began to shake slightly. What happened? The magic power in Iori Utahime's body began to run rapidly, preventing this sudden change. A crow flew to the bottom of the giant tree. Under the common vision of the technique, Mei Mei discovered the source of the vibration. Master Tien Yuan's enchantment has a crack. I saw a very tiny crack suddenly appear at the place below where Lu Chen and Riko Tenai had entered. It's so small that if you don't observe it with confidence, you will ignore it. But this cannot escape the eyes of Mei Mei, who is a first-level magician. Is this because of the battle inside? Iori Utahime said hastily. Probably that's why. Mei Mei nodded skillfully. Apart from this, there is really no other reason that can explain why this crack suddenly appeared in Lord Tien Yuan's enchantment. Moreover, this crack is still gradually expanding at a slow speed, as if it can't bear the force pressing on the barrier, and it is about to collapse. Crack. The clear and crisp sound of glass breaking is very obvious in this quiet and empty Kusei Palace Honden Square. Iori Utahime and Mei Mei's eyes widened at the same time. Crack. Under the torrent of the mantra of the skeletal scorpion, the emptiness enchantment could no longer bear it and exploded. But at this time, the few people who had been plunged into darkness after the enchantment was broken reappeared in a blank space. It is also the barrier of emptiness. In the entire space, there are actually multiple emptiness barriers, forming a honeycomb structure, which are usually used to defend against foreign enemies and protect Tianyuan. Among the 1,000 doors before passing through the taboo library, only one is correct, and all the rest are connected to the end of emptiness composed of mazes. Of course, there are more than 1,000 doors, but it does not mean that there are more than 1,000 emptiness barriers. Rather, there is overlap. In short, many to one. Therefore, there is no need for guardians here in Tianyuan. Those who do not have Tianyuan's permission, unless their attainments in enchantment are quite high, it is impossible to cross the main hall of Kaohsiung Palace. Instead, you will get lost in the scattered and disorderly enchantment of emptiness. The barrier of emptiness is quite strong, and in ordinary battles, even a special level may not be able to break it in a short time. Unless it is cracked by extremely high enchantment techniques. Because of this, this space was chosen by Tian Yuan as the place for his own evolution, and at the same time, it was also to prevent the evolved self from having the risk of losing control. In fact, it did work. The only difference is that it's not a separate barrier, and a single barrier really can't support the toss between Lu Chen and the evolved Tian Yuan who doesn't know what to call it. It is the overall composition of this emptiness enchantment that has had an effect. Make it impossible to fight directly from inside the barrier to outside the barrier in the few times of confrontation. If it were a single emptiness enchantment, it would not be able to withstand the high-intensity battle at this time, which had reached a scale rarely seen in the world. Crack. 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 The power of the skeletal scorpion is far more than that. After piercing through a barrier of emptiness, the Susanoo, which is tens of meters high, is still shrouded, making it hard for people to see what is going on inside. Whether the Susanoo still exists, and whether Lu Chen among the Susanoos is safe and sound. Just like that, the power of Shiayusha Strike hit the emptiness barrier directly, and it almost stopped for a moment. This brand new barrier of emptiness was suddenly broken. This is still not over. The scene was changed again and again, and one after another emptiness barrier was pierced and broken, and the power of Shiayusha Strike was also continuously weakened. Finally, it came to the space of the penultimate enchantment located at the edge of the entire honeycomb structure, and this ferocious torrent of mantra power completely dissipated. From the position where 273 originally fell to the second emptiness enchantment, one can see the blank space where the attacks disappeared as if separated by 1,000 meters through the successive openings. Thick smoke and dust enveloped the place, making it difficult to see clearly the terrifying blow that was so terrifying that there was no possibility of survival. Shen still endured the 10 blows head-on without hindrance. The result was the same. The cursed tree skeleton ignored Tianai Lizzie who fell into the barrier like it and was protected intact. As if impatient to know the result, it turned into a faint phantom, and finally disappeared completely. And the huge cursed tree skeleton came directly in front of Yanshin. A wave of magic power directly blows away the smoke and dust, revealing a space without any Susanoo or even Lu Chen in it. See here. The cursed tree was swaying its branches and leaves as if triumphantly, and the skeletal scorpion made a cruel and laughing sound like, Jia Jia. It's really not bad. A joking voice suddenly sounded from behind the cursed tree skeleton. The movement of the cursed tree froze, and the sound of the skeleton stopped abruptly. Crack. 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 The cursed tree skeleton quickly shifted direction and looked behind him. I saw Lu Chen standing there intact, clapping his hands unhurriedly, as if he was praising the astonishing blow of the skeletal scorpion just now. Susanoo is still standing majestic on the ground. The difference from the previous one is that there is a gap the size of a watermelon in the third order Susanoo's abdomen. Good job, this really made me a little excited. There was a happy and carefree smile on Lu Chen's face, which had a hint of encouragement and praise. Susanoo's comprehensive strength at each stage, whether it is explosiveness or strength and tenacity, is growing hierarchically. The Susanoo in the third level full body form has reached the extremely high level of normal Susanoo in terms of defense and attack. Even so, a gap was still blasted out by the blow just now, instead of being intact. Although, if you use Susanoo's blade to attack or block, then Susanoo will definitely not be injured. But Lu Chen chose not to break free from the previous mantra, and suffered such a devastating blow head-on. But since this is the case, the cursed tree skeleton is proud enough. However, this is how Lu Chen sees it. This kind of attitude is like a teacher rewarding and encouraging a child after seeing a child do something that a teacher can do casually. For the cursed tree skeleton, it is no different from humiliation. The evolved girl Tianyuan really has no emotions, just a kind of blankness and indifference after merging with the world. But as the curse power brought by negative emotions continued to flow into the cursed tree skeleton, even she became violent and ferocious to a certain extent. As for the skeletal tree controlled by the girl Tian Yuan, the characteristics of the cursed tree are relatively plain, but the skeletal whose mana power represents negative and dark, as quite violent and bloodthirsty. Feeling the aloofness in Lu Chen's expression, the skeletal scorpion began to quickly gather a large amount of magic power as high as the mass density again, and was ready to launch Shiayusha Strike again. This kind of trick is enough to use once. If there are too many, it will make people tired. The third order Suzunohu's abdomen is about the size of a watermelon, and it looks not small to outsiders, but to Suzunohu, who is tens of meters tall, it is just a small wound. Under the surge of chakra and pupil power, it has already been quickly made up. Seeing that the skeletal scorpion was about to perform the same trick again, a dangerous smile appeared on the corner of Lu Chen's mouth. In the process of condensing and forming the Shiayusha Strike in the mouth of the skeleton, he jumped up and fell heavily towards the cursed tree skeleton. Evil Ghost Strike. Just finished preparations, Lu Chen drove the master stage Susanna to descend as a ghost. The big blue hand grabbed the extremely powerful and destructive spell ball hanging above the skeletal beetle's mouth before the latter sprayed it out. Afterwards, the arc of Lu Chen's mouth rose again. Roar. Susanoo, who was tall like a double-faced ghost Shira, roared, and forcefully stuffed the magic ball back into the skeletal beetle's big mouth full of sharp fangs. The other hand violently pressed the open mouth of the skeletal beetle until it closed tightly. Boom. In the widened scarlet eyes of the skeletal beetle, the destructive attack that pierced through nearly 10 emptiness barriers in a row exploded from the skeletal scorpion's abdomen wrapped around the body of the curse tree. The strong energy caused the originally sharp lines and metallic color of the body to instantly inflate into a balloon. It's like pumping air into the mouth of a catfish, and then, from a long and slender body to a state that will explode when poked. And the power of that spell ball will naturally not end at this level. The body of the skeletal scorpion is hard, and even the shells cannot hurt it in the slightest. But this kind of energy with amazing destructive power and blasted from the inside of the unarmored body is not so easy to stop at all. Even the girl Tian Yuan in the curse tree constantly controls the skeletal scorpion, uses the magic power to strengthen the inside of the body, and suppresses the catharsis of energy. The skeletal scorpion that had swelled to almost a sphere still had thin dark beams of light emitting from the gaps in the armor. Afterwards, there were more and more extremely high concentration spell beams representing astonishingly destructive power. After only holding on for a few breaths, the body of the skeletal scorpion could no longer suppress the rampant magic power in the body, and the entire round body exploded with a bang. Boom boom boom. The explosion of the skeletal scorpion even affected the curse tree that was entangled and attached, as well as Susanoo, who did not leave after the spell ball exploded. Pieces of scorched black meat, like charred barbecue, turned into blood rain from the sky and splashed down along with the black and purple blood. But because it is essentially the product of the condensation of mana power, the structure of the form differs little from the power of the spell. On the way of the flesh and blood falling, part of it landed on Susanoo's tall body. Part of it landed and splashed onto the torso of the nearest curse tree, which had been scorched in several areas by the explosion. Most of them turned into dust and floated in the air on the way of falling. Well, Tian Yuan, the girl in the giant tree, let out a muffled groan, and her chest began to heave greatly. Obviously, he also suffered a lot of damage under this blow. The girl Tian Yuan opened her arms, and a more dazzling silver glow flickered in her opened eyes again. And this time, not only that. In the silver glow, one can vaguely see the same mysterious pattern on the surface of the Leucaria shell during evolution. The mysterious pattern contains mystery in mystery, and at this moment, the surface of the pattern still reveals a green color that represents vitality. This time, Susanoo didn't suffer the slightest damage, and the wreckage on his body quickly dissipated into nothing. Lu Chen noticed something, a pair of kaleidoscope sharing eyes that exuded depression and ominous curse like a mountain, turned to the girl Tian Yuan in the curse tree. Through the insights of the kaleidoscope Sharingan, you can see more mantras converging towards the mantra tree. First, a phantom of the skeletal scorpion formed at the beginning. Afterwards, with the infusion of a large amount of spell power, the phantom recondensed. Hiss. The reappearing skeleton stared at Lu Chen with deep resentment and cursed eyes. Have you started to be backlashed by the magic power? No, it can't be called backlash, it should be said to be stained with the color of the magic power. Originally, it was a skeletal scorpion that symbolized the negative emotions of the mantra. After the body was completely destroyed, it was affected by more negative emotions such as hatred, anger, and delusion. The negative influence in the mantra made the skeleton more ferocious and bloodthirsty. Looking at Lu Chen, who almost killed it just now, the desire to tear Lu Chen to pieces became even stronger. For the black-purple color on the body, the proportion of black becomes more, while the purple is deeper. This time, the curse tree, which was entwined by the skeletal beetle, was also affected. Mottled black also appeared on top of the original green, but it was not obvious yet. Looking at it this way, Lu Chen felt that the skeletal scorpion in front of him seemed to be a smaller version of the negative and evil chakra. Many times the little-tailed beast has. Keep dancing. Lu Chen folded his arms and looked down at Tian Yuan, the girl in the curse tree. The skeleton used Black Curse Wave, which has a faster launch speed and does not require too much time to charge. One after another mantra rays bombarded Susanoo almost continuously. PFF'd. A Susanoo blade appeared in his right hand, and the third-order Susanoo in full body form issued 2 consecutive slashes. The first one completely cancels out the dozens of rays, and the second one cuts directly at the cursed tree skeleton. This time, the skeletal scorpion no longer made a move, but was moved by the entangled curse tree. Countless roots broke through the ground and grew to hundreds of meters in an instant, forming a 5-layer thick giant wooden barrier. Boom boom boom. The sound of explosions was endless, and the sawdust mixed with dust and smoke was blown away by the wooden hand made of a tough wooden branch by the curse tree. The human-like feet formed by changing the posture of the giant tree support the body of the curse tree and the skeleton on it. He rushed towards Susanoo with heavy steps. This change also caused a strange look in Lu Chen's eyes. Because of his relationship with Susanoo, the other party changed like a cat drawing a tiger and came out with the understanding of fighting with both hands and feet. But the opponent's current structural posture reminded Lu Chen of the technique of the wooden man between the thousand-handed pillars. It's just that the main body of the other party is still the giant wooden body of the curse tree, but there are simply extra hands and feet. During this moment of ecstasy, the cursed tree skeleton has traveled hundreds of meters and arrived in front of Lu Chen. Even if he is in a trance, Lu Chen's fighting consciousness and instinct come from Uchiha Madara's endless battles and battlefields, coupled with the kaleidoscopic Sharingan that sees everything. There was no possibility of hiding the opponent's actions in front of Lu Chen. Not to mention that the opponent's actions are too cumbersome, and it is completely incomparable with his Susanoo. When the opponent waved a huge wooden fist, Susanoo almost staggered his body, and hit the curse tree's body with a heavy blow. While the latter fell backwards, Susanoo reached out to grab the arm of the curse tree, but was bitten by the wrist by the skeletal scorpion wrapped around the curse tree. Ah! The skeletal scorpion that was ready to go has nowhere to hide before Lu Chen's eyes. The moment Shu Zuo's wrist was about to be bitten, the other arm on one limb and 2 arms suddenly grabbed the head of the skeleton. Using the hard head of the skeletal beetle as an attack weapon, it smashed hard on the curse tree. And because the curse tree was firmly grasped by the other hand on Susan's right arm, it couldn't fall down at all. In this way, he was held down and continuously endured the smashing blows from the skull of the skeletal beetle. Curse Seawood. Accompanied by large pieces of sawdust falling off, the curse tree glowed with a strong green glow. There is a strong murderous light hidden in the vitality, rendering the entire blank space into a piece of green. Even through the barrier gaps that the skeletal scorpion penetrated before, the adjacent empty barriers that were penetrated and connected were dyed with a layer of green light. Lu Chen frowned slightly. I noticed something strange under Susanoo's feet. Immediately, I saw an unusually tough mana wood vine wrapped around Susanoo's ankle. In the next moment, thousands of wooden vines of the same toughness and strength gushed out from the ground like a flood, some impacted on Susanoo's body, and some entangled in his hands. Parts of the body or arms. In this vast force like a natural disaster, the entire Susanoo was almost driven off the ground, and hit heavily on the edge of the emptiness barrier above. That mass of vines came from all directions. The momentum seems to be like a spider web that will take Susanoo as its prey and completely bind it in a suspended state. But Susanoo's power in the third stage is not limited to this level. Lu Chen, who was taken the lead by the sudden attack, did not waver in the slightest, with his arms folded in front of his chest, his right hand on his left arm, and his index finger slightly raised. The roaring chakra was instilled into Susanoo. Susanoo, whose arms were bound, roared so loudly that he grabbed those vines with his backhand with pure power. Pull up those densely packed vines by their roots, and shake them vigorously, pulling the curse tree carcass into the air, smashing this layer of emptiness barrier like throwing a rope ball. It even hit the last emptiness barrier from the outside world, and an obvious crack appeared in the barrier behind. Even though the cursed tree skeletal flying by Susanoo had been smashed into a layer of emptiness barrier, the momentum did not disappear much. The cursed tree skeleton directly hit the void barrier near the periphery. Crack. A broken spiderweb-like crack has appeared in the barrier behind. It was only when the cursed tree slowed down a little after breaking through an emptiness barrier in time, and released a large number of trees as a buffer behind it that's the case. Otherwise, the emptiness enchantment near the outermost will also be destroyed by Dongchen. However, the difference is not too big. The moment the third order Susanoo fell to the ground, it showed an astonishing explosive force, followed by the flying cursed tree skeleton. The cursed tree carcass hit the buffer tree. Before it had time to stabilize its body, it saw the full-body Susanoo who had already rushed in front of it. Lu Chen, who was on Susan's head, folded his arms, looking down at the girl Tianyuan inside the cursed tree. The girl Tianyuan also looked up at Lu Chen with her silver eyes showing mysterious lines. There was a frenzied smile on the corner of Lu Chen's mouth. Susanoo directly punched the cursed tree. Boom. Boom boom boom. The ear-shattering collision sound resounded through the entire emptiness barrier, and was also transmitted to other barriers that were connected together because of the broken impact port. After punching, Susanoo didn't stop attacking, but launched a punch like a bombardment. One punch after another, carrying a heavy force, they kept hitting the cursed tree. The next layer of trees used as a buffer was instantly squeezed flat by this heavy force like a mountain slope. Hiss. The skeletal scorpion let out a low growl, and quickly condensed a wave of spell power from its mouth. I really don't have a long memory. As a one-body double-faced Shira ghost god, the third order Susanoo, while attacking with two fists in front, his movements did not have the slightest stagnation. The other palm above the right arm directly grabbed the neck of the skeletal scorpion that was about to launch an attack. Chi chi chi. The skeletal scorpion was forced to change the direction of the attack by Susanoo's other arm, causing the wave of magic power that was originally attacking Lu Chen inside Susanoo's head to draw an upward arc in the air. As Shu Zuo's arm suppressed the power of the skeletal scorpion, this wave of mana power was driven and finally bombarded on the emptiness barrier above. It caused a strong vibration in this layer of emptiness enchantment. Facing the special level enchantment of emptiness that can last for a long time, under the unknown creature formed by the condensed terrifying mantra, and the tens of meters high hides the outrageous and unreasonable monster, which represents under the purely destructive Shira ghosts and gods. But it is completely vulnerable, and even faintly becomes a powerful destruction unit after receiving the attack. This kind of battle has indeed reached the level of exceeding the standard. If the superclass is involved, the chances of survival are quite slim. At the blind spot where Susanoo was blocked from sight by the thick body of the cursed tree, the lower body of the skeletal beetle that was originally wrapped around the giant tree quietly twisted. Then it turned into a sharp black light and pierced directly on Susanoo's left leg, causing Susanoo to lose his balance for a moment. A gap can also be seen at the thigh that was stabbed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the cursed tree, which had been suppressed downwind and attacked by a violent storm, suddenly released a large number of vine branches. On the top of the vine branches, this time it no longer represents the greenness of vitality, but is mixed with a lot of black yin whole mantra. The terrifying mantra power of Fujihai. The mantra power represents aggressive power, plus the power of Fujihai's impact and high-density extrusion. This attack displayed extraordinary power. Susanoo, who was about to lose his balance and was about to kneel on the ground, was thrown out, and then he was submerged in it by the sea of vines. Ha ha ha. That's it, that's the fun, ha 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 ha. Feeling the external pressure impact and feedback from Susanoo, who is constantly being tortured, Lu Chen on the head of Susanoo became more and more joyful, and opened his arms with a big smile. This kind of hearty feeling as a battle, no one has been able to make him feel it since he came to this world. Even if it is Fu Hiesher, it can only allow him to show part of his strength. And now, this is the first time that he has felt the thrill of fighting. It's really worthwhile for him to come here, especially to understand the so-called evolution beyond the limits of human beings in a whole new dimension. Lu Chen opened his scarlet eyes wide, and a crazy and excited smile appeared on his handsome face. The sound of creaking came from the body of Susanoo covered by the sea of mantra vines. Lu Chen's black hair, affected by the chakra gushing out of his body as if it could go straight to the sky, became completely erect. At the same time, a layer of chakra blue flame is also a manifestation of Lu Chen rising. A suit of clothes, no wind, automatic. That appearance is the same as that of the Super Saiyan in Dragon Ball. In Lu Chen's wide-open eyes, the bloody and ominous kaleidoscope of Sharingan burst out with curse and domineering pupil power. Boom. Susanoo's slightly broken body, which had already lost a lot of parts, erupted with a strong blue light under the influx of huge power. Accompanied by a roar that could not be concealed even by the turbulent mantra Sea of Vines. Under the Sea of Vines, Susanoo, who has been fully recovered, has 4 arms extending out of the Susanoo blade. 4 slashes that were powerful enough to split mountains, rivers and the earth, cut out 4 huge ravines from the Sea of Magic power vines that were as vast as an ocean. Immediately afterwards, the ravine burst into blue radiance representing Susanoo, and the entire Sea of Magic power vines was completely destroyed by the more terrifying destructive force. Saw. Let me continue to enjoy this carefree. Tian Yuan, the girl in the curse tree, didn't seem to have thought that this blow would be so easily deflected by Lu Chen, and it would not pose a threat to Lu Chen at all. There was a trace of almost imperceptible surprise on the face of the delicate girl who had no expression. Immediately, I heard this crazy and joyful voice. The young girl Tianyuan returned to her expressionless and indifferent posture, facing the Susanoo who jumped into the air and fell towards this direction at a height of tens of meters, and once again controlled the curse tree skeleton to launch an attack. Spell energy gun branch hit Fuji Ming. However, Lu Chen was already excited. This kind of trick is simply not enough to watch. Susanoo almost threw the 2 Susanoo blades in his front hand suddenly. The mantra wave of the skeletal scorpion and the vine strike of the mantra tree all disintegrated under the 2 Susanknives that were powerful enough to shake the sea and split mountains and rivers. After the 2 curved blades broke through the attack, they were heavily inserted into the ground of the empty result. The aggressive and bloodthirsty skeletal scorpion wanted to attack Susanoo who had no support in the air again, but Lu Chen predicted it, and another blue-glowed curved blade was thrown by Susanoo in advance. It pierced through that bloody mouth. Hiss, black and purple blood splashed out, and the skeletal scorpion neighed in pain. And Lu Chen, who was not hindered in the slightest, controlled Shura Zuzo, who was tens of meters tall, and the only back hand among the 4 hands that still had a curved blade, threw the curved blade in front of him. While falling on the cursed tree skeleton, Susanoo grabbed the curved blade with his right hand in front of him. He stabbed fiercely into the curse tree. The other hand held another curved blade that had been deeply pierced into the skeleton's mouth. The terrifying impact, coupled with the frightening destructive power of the 2 curved blades, pierced through both of them, firmly nailing them to the emptiness barrier behind. This happened to be the place where the cursed tree skeleton hit some broken marks earlier. At this moment, the last emptiness enchantment separating this layer from the outside world could not withstand the battle between the 2, and fell apart. The crisp and broken voice came to the ears of Iori Utahime and Mei Mei. Could that crack in the barrier be caused by the battle between Lu Jun and the evolved Lord Tianyuan? Iori Utahime took 2 steps forward and came to the edge of the platform square, overlooking the roots of the giant tree worshipped with white knots from afar. Then, the pupils shrunk. There, originally, what Mei Mei saw were only tiny, imperceptible cracks. But following the sound of glass shattering just now, there were cracks spreading around the gap. The first one has expanded to the height of an ordinary portal. The cracked gap also widened to the width of a watermelon. Looking from the outside, there is darkness in it, and the roar and explosion of violent collisions can be heard faintly. It seems that the crack in this enchantment is precisely because it can't bear the extremely fierce battle inside, so it is overwhelmed. Mei Mei also had a dignified expression. I'm afraid the battle inside has exceeded our expectations, but we just don't know what the outcome will be. A huge roar broke Mei Mei's words. Under the shocked gazes of both of them, the barrier crack that formed like space shattered instantly spread to a height of tens of meters. The space seems to have suffered an unimaginable impact at this moment, and it is constantly shaking. Together with the entire main hall of the Xingxing Palace and the square platform, all of them vibrated strongly. However, neither Iori Utahime nor Mei Mei paid attention to these at all. While stabilizing the center of gravity of his body, he opened his eyes wide and fixedly looked at the 2 behemoths that broke through the crack tens of meters high. Boom! Susanoo in full body shape, nailed the cursed tree skeleton with 2 curved blades, broke the barrier of emptiness and returned to the main hall of the Palace of the Star. Lu Chen's actions still did not hesitate. He didn't care where the battlefield changed to. Susanoo roared and exploded with strength, holding 2 curved blades nailed to the body of the cursed tree skeleton, suppressing the cursed tree skeleton from the air, and slammed into the quaint and uneven buildings in the Xingxing Palace, among the houses. I don't know how many houses turned into ruins at this moment. The rising smoke and sawdust couldn't cover up the whole body of Susanoo, which was as huge as a small mountain, and the cursed tree skeleton that was also tens of meters under him. Then. What is that? Feel the two giants that seem to exist in two dimensions with me, and feel the smallness and powerlessness of myself like ants. Iori Utahime shivered unconsciously under the shrine maiden costume, and his feet were a little unsteady. The widened eyes were trembling, full of shock that made the brain go blank. This kind of existence. Although Mei Mei is one level higher than Iori Utahime's magician level, she is not much better than Iori Utahime. Even if he wanted to stop the trembling of his hands falling by his side, he couldn't do it at all. This is the first time she has appeared like this. Feel. Even after witnessing 6 eyes, Gojo Satoru's inhuman strength, Mei Mei didn't feel as shocked and unbelievable as she is now. This kind of impact is only from the distance of 100 meters, and it does not need other things at all, and it has already made her feel more powerful than a child. Feelings of weakness and powerlessness, not to mention. A destructive and ominous power emanates from the blue body tens of meters away, like a real Shira ghost appearing in the world, trying to destroy everything in the world. And the existence under the pressure of that ghost-like existence. It is also impossible to ignore that, even the special grade is probably far behind in front of it, just like the boundless ocean of mantra power. Neither of these two, even one, needs to be judged by other mortals or jujutsu masters. They exist, even if they do not reveal their strength. As long as it appears in front of the eyes, no matter what level of jujutsu master it is, it will inevitably rise in the heart. These two huge existences like the giants of the ancient gods are definitely the most important part of the jujutsu world today. A well-deserved existence of an exceptional level. Whether it is the Asura ghost or the giant tree centipede below, their existence itself means a super specification. Hiss, Susanoo almost pressed the skeletal beetle below, spouting a large amount of black blood from his mouth, writhing in pain. The huge body tens of meters long has a huge broken body in every move. In a blank, empty enchantment of emptiness, nothing can be seen. But when he came to the outside world from the emptiness enchantment, he just twisted his body in pain, and he didn't know how many houses were in front of him, like fragile toys turned into a ruin. And this force caused the platform of the Shigong Square to vibrate again. This time, Iori Utahime and Mei Mei, who were so small and shocked that their minds went blank, came back to their senses. Miss Ming, that should be Lu Jun. Iori Utahime's complexion was still a little pale, and his voice was trembling in disbelief. No wonder Iori Utahime. In fact, the full-body Susan in the third order form is basically a half-body Susan with the first-order skeleton, with legs growing out. And it seems to have grown flesh and skin, so that the bright bones in it can no longer be seen. But only from one limb and 2 arms of the upper body, and the unchanged appearance of the double-faced Shura, one can more or less guess the connection between the other party and Lu Chen. In fact, the third-rank Susan at this moment, the power in his breath that seems to destroy everything, and the power compared to the first-rank half-length Susan is almost heaven and earth. And that domineering and crazy attitude that can almost destroy the world at every turn. It's just too scary. Mei Mei didn't even notice the cold sweat falling down her face. She silently stared at the roaring ghosts and gods in the distance, and only opened her mouth reluctantly after a few seconds. That's right, the person in that blue Shura is Lu Jun. Even if I fought that person before, or even erased a small mountain from the map, it's half of my body. That is to say, that attitude back then is still not Lu Jun's full strength. Iori Utahime said in shock that the turbulent waves in his heart could not be calmed down at all. Originally thought that when he was fighting with Fu Hieisher, the astonishing strength of the heavenly beings was already Lu Chen's full strength. After all, that attack completely wiped out a small mountain. However, that is still not Lu Chen's full effort. Even, it is far from Lu Chen's true strength. At this moment, they are only a few hundred meters away, and when viewed from a distance, one can already feel the attitude of looking up at the sky, and the shocking mighty power contained therein. It is far from being comparable to the half-length Susan in the first-order form. Taking a deep breath, to calm down her turbulent mood a little, Mei Mei looked at the majestic and mighty Susanoo. Lu Jun's strength has far exceeded our imagination, and even in the entire Jujutsu world, no one can be stronger than Lu Jun. And I was silent for a while, thinking back to the present when I was in contact with Lu Chen. My cognition of strength was broken again and again, like a bottomless abyss. After Mei Mei paused, she spoke with a complex and shocking expression. We don't know if the current Lu Jun has really used all his strength.